Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the official Curious Realm coverage of Texas UFO Fest 2023. Our first guest is Patricia O'Connell. She is author of Bleed Through, and this is a pretty wild story. You were here last year presenting as well, and let's get into a little bit of your brother's story and what led to Bleed Through, Patricia.
Well, my brother he believed himself to be an abductee.
Okay.
It took a long time for him to come to that conclusion. He thought he was just having wild dreams, but
sure.
Once he got into it, he realized that a lot of people in the world have experiences that really mess up their lives.
Yeah.
Ruin their relationships. People don't believe them. And whether it's a real thing, whether they were really abducted, or whether it's a psychological phenomenon or what, this was a real thing they were dealing with. And so he was really involved with trying to bring them into the fold, talk to them, hear their stories, and really empathize and sympathize with them and make them, feel like they're not as crazy as everybody else was making them feel. So by the time he contacted me in 2015, he was developing a TV reality show to tell the stories of the abductees, because nobody else was doing that.
Yeah.
They do UFO shows, and he was wanting to recognize the abductees. And so he had been gathering stories and people who were willing to go on camera from all over the world. And he had come across this one case in Texas, and my brother was in Connecticut at the time. And he said, there's this guy in Texas who's having so many experiences, and it had been for 3.5 years. And he said, I can't possibly cover his story in one episode, not even a 3-episode arc.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in interviewing this guy, first of all, to just kind of vet him, see if he's for real?
Sure.
And then write, because I'm a writer, would you be interested in writing something, a book, maybe a series of books, maybe a screenplay, whatever? And I'm like, well, sure, I'm interested. And then he said, he says that he's killed and buried an alien. I was in.
That's a big tater. It's a big tater.
I was hooked. I mean, I was hooked before, but I'm like, my head started spinning. If this is true, as everybody says, if it's true, this could be the greatest thing ever. Yeah. And so I was in. And so then my husband and I went to visit this guy. I had communicated with him by phone and online for quite a while, and he told me all these stories, and I realized it was not like any UFO story I had ever heard. It's more like the Skinwalker Ranch story originally. I mean, people know the Skinwalker Ranch TV show now, and that's more technology and things like that. But in the beginning, it was blue lights and a UFO and a wolf, an extra large wolf, and maybe a little time slip or poltergeist kind of thing.
Things popping in and out on the property from the people that owned it.
Yes. But this was like that on steroids. I mean, he had UFOs, aliens, ghosts, poltergeist, what we think was demonic possession, and I don't even know what to call it, where he saw what appeared to be, I call it a plasma angel in his living room. And it was just so fascinating and so unusual that I was totally into this. And I wanted to know, I always seek the truth. I don't need to validate a belief in UFOs or aliens or ghosts or anything like that. I just want to know truth. And so I was really eager to dig into this and work with the Clay, the subject, to find out, how many of these things can we debunk? Because he was so convincing. I wanted to sort out the wheat from the chaff, basically.
And you have to. We have quite a community of targeted individuals that listen to this show, and AV technician, radio operator, all kinds of things. I've got crazy technology for scanning for frequencies. A lot of the stuff that they use on Skinwalker Ranch.
Yes.
I have for setting up wireless mics, things like that. And I bring those to somebody's property, of course. But before I do that, sometimes they look at me funny when I start pulling out my gas meter.
Oh, absolutely.
And my radon detector.
I wish we
and
had
my
had,
Geiger
yes.
counter. Like, let's see if you're maybe living on a fault line first. Let's see if maybe you don't have a natural gas leak in your house or
Right.
radon, something that let's get rid of the quantitative first and then leave the anomaly. And now
Exactly.
we'll research the anomaly.
Exactly.
And it can be hard, like you said, to separate the wheat from the chaff, especially when you're talking with an experiencer.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, it's a life-stealing experience. Doesn't
Yes.
matter. Normally I would have my books behind me, and I would reference my library of people who've been on the show, and quite a few of them are experiencers,
Yeah.
be it paranormal, what have you. And very few of them start out with like, wow, this was an amazing experience.
Right.
I would love to repeat this. Like, they get to that point,
Yes.
through healing, through talking with other people, through sharing their stories sometimes. But it's very rare that, like, it's a great experience from the get-go. You're normally seeing it once again, that truth is different for everybody.
Yes.
And the idea that one person in a house can have experiences and another person can't.
Right.
Yes, that is being truly filtered through your belief, you do have to question, is it the fact of even your belief possibly helping manifest those things?
That's another possibility. Well, one of the things I noticed with him that I had noticed with my brother when he first stopped believing that he was having these just really crazy dreams and realized that maybe he was being abducted. And my sister-in-law had experiences too, so that kind of confirmed that. But I saw a pattern where once something extraordinary opens your mind kind of stays open to everything.
And it ain't closing again.
Well, and it's hard to start discerning and discriminating again after that. And so in Clay's case, he wanted to capture what was going on camera. And so he had cameras everywhere. But what he would do, he would just film at random or take snapshots at random. And then he could interpret maybe a bug. Sure. And so one of the things that I did when I first came in, I was he had and I'll show that in my video. I think I showed it last year, where he had a video clip that he said these are rods, and there's a whole you know what I'm talking about. Supposedly interdimensional creatures that look like flying worms that have 12 wings on them or something.
The work of Paez.
Yes. Yeah. And I said, this is easily debunked. It's a bug, and I actually showed him I think it was National Geographic or Discovery Channel or whatever video, and where they had a regular video camera and then a high-speed video camera. Yeah. At the same time at a cave entrance in the dark, and they had a timer in the middle so that you could see. That it was exactly the same time when this thing flew across, and in one it looked like the wormy thing with the 12 wings, and the other was just a moth. Yeah. So he kind of resisted that, but then I explained that I want people to believe your story because I believe your story. I believe you saw absolutely. You experienced extraordinary things, and so I don't want them to be distracted by stuff that's easily debunked.
That has been debunked for a minute.
Yes,
or a whole lot more.
And he resisted that at first, and then when we went home after that first weekend that we visited him, he sent me a picture from something that he had said looked like a monkey face floating in the air that he had from before. Well, he said, I debunked that. I debunked the monkey face. It turned out that it was the silver back side of a stop sign in the distance when he had rain on his truck windshield.
Okay.
So he was like, okay, I'm in.
Good.
I'm in.
Good.
You know,
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Like I want to go through and quantifiably look at the things that I collect.
Yes.
That's great.
And actually, after a while, he had a lot of photos and a few videos. But I started saying, forget all of that. Just tell me your stories, because his experiences were so rich, and his emotion, his passion with that, it was like scary and fascinating at the same time. And really, at the one of the last interviews that I did with him, I said, so would you say this is overall a negative experience or a positive experience? And he sat back and he said, it was a negative experience. But then his face lit up and his eyes kind of went up, and he said, but it was like being on the Sci-Fi Channel every night, sitting out here on the runway and looking up at the sky. And so you could see this. Yes, it made my life crazy. People didn't believe me. I had to deal with, I'm doing aircraft repair. I'm working for the FAA, or the FAA controls my career.
Yeah.
And, but he just, he wanted to know, he wanted to communicate with them. And he felt like some of the things that happened prevented him from doing that.
Now, at what point did he have the experience with an entity that he believed he killed and buried Patricia?
He had some like 4-foot-tall gray aliens that showed up in the hangar. And I don't remember if I explained that all this took place at a little airport in the middle of nowhere, and he was an aircraft technician. He had these aliens show up. One had been there, and it shot what I can only describe as a laser beam, blue laser beam, about 4 inches in diameter. And he said it shot through everything that was in the hangar and cut a hole through everything, and including a hole through the outside wall of the hangar. I mean, we're talking the corrugated steel.
Yeah.
And so he was on edge. He was carrying a gun with him all the time. He had a gun at his workbench. He had one on him. And so he was kind of terrified the whole time. And he said then there was this other one that came in, and it caught him by surprise. And he shot it and killed it.
Wow. And what proceeded from that point?
Well, his first thought was, I've got an alien body here.
Yeah.
And then he started thinking, what do I do? I mean, I could put this thing in the back of my truck and drive all over the country and be on Oprah and CNN and, everything, and, be famous. But there was something about it that really bothered him, and I didn't know how much it bothered him until like one of our last interviews. But he felt so bad about murdering this creature, especially a creature that he wanted so desperately to communicate with. He wanted to know what they know.
Sure.
And something about that, I for lack of a better word, I want to say like his affection for these creatures, or his fascination for their kind. He didn't take that route. He felt like it was, the wrong thing to do. And he was afraid that people were going to think he was a monster.
Sure.
So...
all too often the story, whenever you hear about hunters with Bigfoot and things like that, that had it in their sight. Once they had it in their sight, for some reason, they just couldn't. It's just too human.
Yes.
Too human.
Yes.
And yeah.
And I said, well, these creatures have invaded your home, and they've basically threatened you. You can't stop them.
Yeah.
And I said, if it was a bear that was in your house, you would shoot it. And he said, you could see him. He hesitated. He said, I'm not sure I would. So he had that love for other creatures.
Sure.
Living creatures.
It kind of freaks my wife out that I will go get a glass. Like we've recently had, because of all the heat, we've had scorpions coming into the house.
Ooh.
I'll literally go grab a pair of tweezers in a jar and put them in there and go release them outside.
Oh.
She's like, why don't you kill it? I'm like, because it kills things that we really don't want in there. Like, that thing ain't going to hurt you unless you step on it or find it accidentally.
I know.
So, yeah, it's one of those... I'm very much the same way. I have no reason at all to kill the thing. I'm not going to harvest it for food or a pelt.
Right.
Right. Like, unless I'm going to do that, I have no reason whatsoever to take its life.
Right. Yeah. So he was kindred spirit.
Yeah.
So I realized as time went on how strong that feeling was, and that was overshadowing this idea that this is the greatest discovery in the world and I should be telling everybody, and instead he ended up burying it.
Wow. And to your knowledge, is that still there? Do you know an approximate location? Did he give you an approximate location
of that? I do, and I have a team that we're putting together to go do phase 2.
Ground penetrating radar
and investigation, LIDAR, and those kinds of things.
Wow.
So, and also to do what you were talking about with the chemical sensors and things like that, because that was one of the first things I looked at. All I had was a Gauss meter and a Geiger counter.
Basic things.
Yeah. So I mean, I couldn't test. My brother had chemical sensors that he could do, probably more like what you had.
Yeah.
But he didn't make it down there. He actually was supposed to come out to Texas to do this investigation and film the excavation of whatever was there. And he had a heart attack and died. So that was a gut punch for everybody involved, including Clay. Because Clay had become very close to my brother because my brother was doing what he wanted to do.
Working on his case.
He wanted to help the experiencers feel cared about, feel heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And acknowledged for the experience they had, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so, he was stunned. And so we just kind of floundered for months after that. And then, we continued to correspond, and my husband and I went back out there and did more interviews, and we actually spent the night out at the airport by ourselves.
Any experiences?
No, that was the hope.
Sure.
And then the last time we were out there, I stayed on the runway all night by myself.
Wow.
Again, hoping to have something. Come on down,
Here I am. Now, what ended up happening to this individual with the experiences?
Well, so we continued to correspond after my brother died, and my sister-in-law and my niece were having a really hard time coping with my brother's death. And I felt like we needed to do something for him, so I put together a memorial video, and I sent it out. It was maybe a year later, and I sent it out to everybody, all the experiencers that, my brother had contacted on Facebook or wherever, and including to Clay. And I didn't hear back from him, didn't hear back, and I thought that was really odd because they had become very close. Yeah. So I emailed his sister, and I said, is he okay? Because I knew that once Clay saw the video, he would have called me or emailed me to comment on it.
Sure.
And so I asked his sister, is he okay? And she said, he's in the hospital. He's got multiple organ failure and flesh-eating bacteria. And if he survives, he's going to have huge swaths of his skin removed.
Now, had he been anywhere like the beach, anything like that?
No.
skinny dipping in a pond, places where those things are found.
Yeah, no.
You know, because like you hear about it every couple years down in Galveston. Somebody cuts their foot and ends up with flesh-eating bacteria, things like that. So just getting rid of that anomaly.
Throughout the course of his 3.5 years, he had been at the airport for many years before this started. It started in 2010, ended in 2013. Throughout the course of those 3 years, he got sicker and sicker. Now, part of this demonic possession stuff manifested in his to-be ex-wife, who slammed his hand in her truck and then dragged him for like 1.5 miles before she finally let him go. She unloaded a .45 at his crew in the hangar one day. Didn't hit anybody, thank God. But there were things that happened to him, either from her or, in one case, from one of the alien ships that came down really low. That he ended up in the hospital. He was on drugs. He had kidney failure. He had a clot in his lung. So throughout the course of these experiences, he got sicker and more damaged. So that it kind of made sense when he ended up in the hospital. And I'm not going to tell your audience the rest of this.
Don't give away the end of the book.
But after he had passed away and some time had passed, and I talked to his sister, how's your mom doing? And I had spoken to his mom before. Really sweet lady. And I asked if his mom was up to talking to me, and she was. So when I talked to her, she told me something when I asked kind of a similar question about trying to figure out why he would have ended up with
just flesh-eating bacteria.
And she told me something that's like the classic record scratch that made me rethink everything that he had told me and think back to the very beginning. And I'm thinking if I were reading this book, I would get to that part in the end and go back and read the book again.
Yeah.
Because it's just so mind-boggling. And I had to think, okay, could this, what I find out at the end, have caused some of the things that we were looking at, gases, radon, radiation.
Sure.
What could have caused these kinds of things? Now, it wouldn't explain the fact that other people at the shop who worked with him and his ex-wife were also experiencing these things.
Yeah.
Like radon or radiation, or those things would have explained why a whole lot of people
even jet fuel fumes.
Yeah.
In a hangar.
Right.
You know.
Well, and the year before all of this started in 2010, in 2009, excuse me, the county had somebody had put an oil drilling rig out there at the south end of the runway. And then I guess they didn't find anything. I don't know what the deal was, but they pulled it out after 6 months. But there was a kind of a sinkhole that the county had to keep coming and filling every year.
Yeah.
And so my thought was, could they have tapped into some kind of pocket of something in the ground?
Sure.
That was released.
You normally hit natural gas before you hit oil.
Yeah.
You could have also tainted the water supply right there with all kinds of things.
That was the other thing I asked. Could they have tapped into
into methane in the water supply, drilling chemicals, all kinds of things.
Yeah. So we don't know. And like I said, I'm just looking for truth. I believe he had some extraordinary experiences. And actually, when MUFON came out to investigate, the first guy who came out had his own experience that night.
Wow.
And they called like the next guy up in the MUFON ranks, and I assume your audience knows who MUFON is.
Yes, we're going to the symposium next week. Yeah. Tune in 2 Tuesdays from now.
And the fellow who was the next highest up in the ranks there came up the next day, did not have an experience. But when I started digging into that and I saw that really happened.
Yeah.
So it just left me with a lot of questions, and I believe sincerely he had some really extraordinary experiences, and they stopped when he moved away from the airport. So you could say, was he making things up? Was he hallucinating? Was he, exaggerating things or whatever?
Sure.
But why would all of that stop when he moved in with his
and
mom?
no reports from the next person that came to live there?
Now there have been reports of ships diving into the ground. One of the things that he had seen.
Okay.
And in fact,
since his leaving.
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yes, not on the airport that I know of, but in the next town.
Okay.
They had seen them. One of the county commissioners, family member, had seen something, and in fact contacted Clay to ask for advice, or do you know what this is, or to explain it. And the fact that he was a pilot, flight instructor, and an aircraft repair technician, he should know the difference between, even something exotic like the space shuttle, or now we've got the Elon Musk's things.
The
Starlinks.
Space junk.
More space junk, yes.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. And, especially like you're saying, being a pilot, things like that. Yeah, you hear cases. Most of the time it's the fact that the pilot's in the air and on plane with something. There was the incident not too long ago where Venus was in a very specific path, and there was I believe it was a United Airlines pilot that actively ducked his plane.
Oh no.
Like thinking that it was an oncoming plane, an oncoming object.
Wow.
It was so bright.
And that's a testament,
in his field of vision.
That's a testament to how compelling just a planet in the night sky
and once again, trained observer, guy flies that route all the time,
right?
Things like that, and that popped up and was just there.
That's fascinating.
It was that was just a few months ago. That was like 3-4 months ago that was in the news, and you do have to be aware of those things. That's the plus side about bringing MUFON out, is they'll start going through astronomical alignments and moon phases.
They'll
and
check
flight
the air traffic control to see was there any strange things.
Yeah. Now, granted, and what a lot of people don't realize is that military aircraft are not going to pop up on Flight Radar 24, folks. Just so you know, that's not how their transponders work. Even whenever you're looking at Skinwalker Ranch,
right?
Whenever they have the helicopters, that is kind of the proof that it's a military helicopter, is that it ain't on their system. If it was on their system, it would be a civilian aircraft. It's interesting to see those things, and once again, not everybody is aware of that.
Yeah,
I saw this light in the sky, and it's kind of in a known flight path, but it wasn't on Radar 24.
Right.
And it's like, doesn't mean that you aren't near a military base or something like that, where it could be one of those coming in. And eliminating that, once again, wheat from chaff, is a very important thing when doing an investigation. But when dealing with an investigation that begins with experience like that, not just a witness sighting,
right?
It's hard, and especially when it becomes an all-consuming part of somebody's life, where it is an affectation to their life.
Yes.
It's very. How have you handled things, I guess, since the wrap-up, Pat? How have you continued? Have you continued investigating, of course, and how has the continuation of the investigation affected you?
Well,
because this is your experience now, too.
It is, and actually the first 2/3 of the book are Clay's story, and I told it as faithfully as I could, the way he told it. And then the last quarter or third of the book is my story, and my brother, Jim O'Connell, his story, as he was the experiencer, but I'm the skeptic.
Yeah.
But I'm an open-minded skeptic. So, how has it affected me? It still has me wondering, when I see other people's reports, or hear their experience, even here at this conference, I'm fascinated, and I'm Mulder. I want to believe.
I use the term skeptic properly when it comes to things, because a lot of this show is demystifying topics, getting to the root of topics, things like that. Like, we could talk conspiracy all day long, and that's fun, and it's great.
Right.
But is that truly helping the cause? Is that truly helping the cause of research, moving a field forward? When it comes to these topics, when it comes to these things, it becomes a personal truth.
Yes.
And it becomes something that, once again, is a life-stealing experience and a life-changing experience, even investigating them. So thank you for doing the work that you do on cases like this. And let everybody know, Pat, where they can go to buy their copy of Bleed Through, where they can go to keep up with all your work and all the updates on the case.
You can get Bleed Through on Amazon, and the website is experiencers.com with an X at the beginning, experiencers.com. That was actually my brother's website, and his daughter and I scrambled to rescue that.
to maintain control of the domain?
Yes. Anybody who wants to get a hold of me can reach me at starmanjimmy@gmail.com.
Awesome. Fantastic. Pat, thank you so much. I know you're going to be speaking here in a few minutes. While you are online checking out all of the amazing work of Pat O'Connell, folks, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is the website. That's where you can go, like, subscribe, follow, all of that good stuff. That's also where you can find our experiencer form. If you have had an experience with the paranormal, if you have been touched by the extraterrestrial, if you're a government whistleblower or a targeted individual, CuriousRealm.com/story is our experiencer form. Fill it out. We will present your case and evidence to our experts and try to get you some answers. Stay tuned after this commercial break, everybody. We will be right back with our continuing coverage of Texas UFO Fest Texas UFOcon 2023 here in Jefferson, Texas, right after this. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Curious Realm continuing coverage of Texas UFOcon 2023 here in Jefferson, Texas. Our guest in this segment is Martha Hazard-Decker. She is actually a police trainer. You train people in the world of forensic investigation, things like that. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. We actually met you, or my wife did, rather. I was in the midst of interviews, and you came up and were chatting up my wife at MUFON. Gave her your card, and I was like, I know her. Like, we are connected on Facebook.
Right.
And tried tracking you down. We kept missing each other throughout the conference and over the last year. So I'm so glad to get you on the show in person. Because when we had Greg Lawson on at the Paranormal Convention in San Antonio all of about 6 months ago, our big conversation with him was on forensic gathering of evidence and proper methods of gathering evidence in the field, whether it be a UFO UAP investigation, whether it be a Bigfoot hunt, or a paranormal investigation.
Exactly. It all pretty much goes the same way for all of them.
And let's kind of start cracking that nut a little bit, Martha, because it can seem very daunting when you tell somebody, like, protocols. We need to follow them.
Right.
Last year, you took the Field Investigator Training Basic course at MUFON, and since have gone through the advanced training, things like that. And
right.
Our conversation just a minute ago before we started recording was how familiar you were with all of those processes. Because, MUFON for the better part of 50 years almost has been using a very forensic data gathering process.
Absolutely. And, it was everything. It was everything that I've done, when I was in law enforcement. And, for 16 plus years with that. So I'd been doing that for a long, long time.
And what position did you hold in law enforcement, just so our audience is aware?
Okay, I started as a street officer, and I retired as the assistant chief and the lead detective.
Yeah, and that's just it. The fact that your job was to gather and examine evidence.
Right.
That was and learn which evidence was acceptable, which ones weren't. The one thing I say on social media regularly, whenever somebody's like, "Look at this evidence," typically the first words out of my mouth are, "Would you like that to defend you in court?"
Right. Or when it's a picture, the same thing. How many did you take?
Yeah.
Because you should do a burst of 3.
Mm-hmm. One before, one during,
Yeah.
one after. Yeah, always pop, pop, pop. If possible, don't zoom in. Leave it wide.
Leave it
so
wide.
You have a frame of reference for size, like
And
a
don't
light pole.
send it to somebody I get this all the time when they contact me. They want to send me the picture through Facebook. And I say, no, I can't do anything. You need to send it to my email.
Yeah. Facebook crunches everything down.
So you don't see stuff.
Yeah, it compresses things. I do a lot of astrophotography, and my wife, whenever she wants me to share a picture, is like, "Don't give it to me from Facebook." For that exact same reason. I was just having a conversation before the conference started with the guys over at the MUFON table and someone else. The idea that I'm sorry, folks, trail cams are great. They're awesome. Unfortunately, you are rewriting over a piece of media and rewriting over it and rewriting it, like daily rewriting over it. You will get ghost images. You will get corrupted data. Even if you format the card, that's how people like your forensics teams are able to go, "Oh, that's awesome. Let me see that SD card." And they can still pull data off of it. Even if you formatted it like 10 times, they can pull things off from a year ago.
That's right.
There are all kinds of ghost images, things like that are inside of there that will gladly corrupt your new data.
Yeah, and they'll send pictures and they'll crop them, zoom them, and it's like, depending on what your optics are.
Yeah. Yeah,
with your camera.
Well, and even with your camera, it's not like you're talking about like a glass lens. You're talking about plastic lenses in front of things. Those create different aberrations. They react differently at temperatures than coated optical glass in an actual lens.
So I don't bring my cameras out very often, but I have two 60D Canon 60Ds because I've used because I was a journalist and a photographer since the 80s.
Yeah.
So I have that in my background, and I always use the Canon.
Yeah.
And the lenses. I had one lens I got knocked down by a football player shooting a football game, and I'm like holding the camera,
trying to tumble with the camera in the air.
He was a really big guy. I got as far as the track when he took me down. The closer you get, it's like forget about the camera. Save the face.
Yeah.
And so I went into a professional place to get it. It was working fine.
Sure.
But just to see about fixing it, and they go, "Oh no, let's go over here, and why don't you just buy one of these $85 plastic?" And it's like,
no. Yeah.
No. So I have two that are kind of dented, but they work great.
But that's just it. It's knowing your equipment and knowing the difference between a camera on a cell phone and the way, because once again, it's rewritable media. It's not like it's a piece of film in a camera like it used to be. Silver oxide, chemicals. There's an actual change of physics that happens to that piece of film.
Right.
What you're getting is a digital 1 and 0 assumption of the situation that was going on.
Right. Right. Even though when I was looking at buying a new professional camera, because those are 16 megapixel.
Yeah.
And then I realized I needed a new phone, too. And then, the one I got, it's like 100 some odd megapixels.
Yeah.
It's like,
darn. You could shoot like 4K Ultra HD. But unfortunately, and I belong to a lot of nerd groups along with paranormal groups because I'm an AV technician. A big argument with people is always, how are they upscaling all of these 35 millimeter film movies to 4K? It's like, well, I don't think you know the math of 35 millimeter film. There are more pixels in a frame of 35 millimeter film than in 4K. Our technology just was never able to project those
Right.
pixels.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I know.
We were never, the projectors in the movie theater were never able to show you the full range of what was actually captured
Right.
by the film and by the lens.
Well-
So going through and recapturing that film, yes, you can digitize it and see every pixel,
Right.
and expand it to 4K and ultra resolution.
So the two that I have, one of them I bought off a friend because she needed money, but it's
always the best
But
time.
it was a 60D just like mine.
Yeah.
But hers was the configured inside for taking,
astrophotography.
Yep.
Yeah. And
So,
I've got
yeah.
two comparable cameras that one is adjusted for my astrophotography, and I love taking that to paranormal places, things like that, because it's stripped of the infrared and ultraviolet filter. It's
Yeah.
basically looking at the world the way a parrot sees it.
So I have those too. It's not just buying the cheap, full color thing. It was the expensive, and so I have to keep different straps on them so I know which is
which. Yeah, because you can't tell when you're looking through the lens.
Right.
You only tell when you see the picture. Like, oh, well, that's awfully purple.
Oh, darn! This is the wrong camera body.
Now, when you begin an investigation, when someone first comes to you, Martha, to go forward, begin an investigation on either a property, a case, what have you, what are the first steps that you begin taking?
Well, first we do an in-depth. I'll do a brief interview on the phone, and I'm usually on the road, so I make them send me, or I require, they send me a detailed email
Okay.
that has, all the detail, their full name, their full address, and of course their phone number, because I work with different people, and this way I can shoot it to them. And if they don't do that, that's just one of my requirements. And if it ends up being, something that could be heavy duty, I may require them to go get a medical and a mental evaluation.
Sure.
Too, because when I go in for the in-depth one, for me being former law enforcement, I feel like I'm doing booking them in at jail because I'm asking all the same questions.
Yeah, here, go take this Minnesota multiphasical exam for me. Yeah.
You ask all the same things because everything can affect it.
Oh, sure, but it's also the fact of you as an investigator have to be coming from a baseline
Exactly.
of data. If you don't start every case with the same baseline.
So we do that. When we do that in depth, and while I'm doing that, I'm recording it with
Videotaping.
video and just regular recorder, doing both, and then we go do a baseline after. And I'll take with the EMF detector, and then with a camera, we'll take pictures, and we just get a base reading of everything.
Sure.
Because sometimes people lie.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes
it
they lie.
happens.
They just want to be on TV. They want someone to say, "Oh, yes, your place is haunted," or whatever.
Sure.
For anything, and it applies to everything. The UFO, the Bigfoot, it's all
no different than somebody that walks right into a police department and says, "I did it."
Exactly.
I did it. And now you've rabbit-holed for how long investigating whether or not this person did it while the real person is actively getting away.
Right.
Unfortunately there is that. And side conversations in the evening over drinks, that's a regular conversation amongst this group, the Bigfoot group, things like that. That looky-loo mentality of, me too. And that's not to say that we don't all need some love, affection, tenderness in the world, some understanding and empathy.
And that's one of the things when I do my presentations, and I'm doing a presentation on the subject, is because the younger generations, they have the phones a lot of times glued to their hands. And, you have to put the phone down. You have to be respectful. You have to leave your opinions, which is the hardest part, outside in your vehicle.
Yeah.
You have to go in and do your interview and your investigations totally unbiased.
Yeah.
And
that's hard. It's hard.
It
it's
is
not
hard.
easy to to subtract oneself from the equation, Martha.
It is hard,
and I think that's where a lot of people get lost, period, in all of these fields, is that one of personification, And,
right.
and like I remember in my abnormal psychology class when we went and spent a couple days and observed the gorillas and we were taking notes, my professor kept telling me, like, stop personifying, Chris. You don't know why that ape is playing with that rock. Just write down 2:30, ape picked up a rock.
Right.
Don't take it any further than that, because now it's not science. You are now assuming what the motivation of picking up that rock is.
And a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
And they have no idea what that person was thinking. We go in and you have to build a rapport with everybody.
Yeah.
And you have to make them feel like they can trust you. So they can talk about something that might be embarrassing to them.
Absolutely.
And you have to do that. Put your phone down. If you're going to be late, call them.
Yeah, talking to any experiencer, and it's a very harsh equation, but I think given your realm of experience, you may appreciate this. The example I give people is interviewing an experiencer of something like this is really no different than interviewing a rape victim.
Exactly.
There is a point of trauma that happens that many people are able, even with the horrifying situation of that 4-letter word, are able to process it, filter it, move forward. Some people aren't. And
True.
it's the same thing with any encounter with the paranormal. Some people are able to process it,
Some
move
aren't.
forward.
Yeah, right.
Some people aren't. And it does, like our last conversation, it can go to bad places. It can lead to addiction. It can lead to all things in life.
Absolutely.
No different than that traumatic experience as a child for somebody.
Well, that was talking to somebody who's become a good friend of mine, Jane Nelms, and she has been, I can't tell you how many times she's been on ships and had that pregnancy, and she's almost 80 now.
Wow.
She is.
Wow.
Somebody's supposed to be doing a documentary on her. She was president of the Dallas chapter at one point.
Interesting.
And she's fascinating. If you just talk to her on the phone, you think she's a kook, like a lot of people. Until you see them in person.
Hey, man, if I told you my paranormal experiences, you might think I was a kook.
And I just tell people no, and she and her husband have been doing all of this stuff for a long time. She still, oh my gosh, the stuff she has that she's collected. And when she was like 19 or so, so she's from England, and her father was a futurist for the royal family.
Oh, wow.
And he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth at one point.
Wow.
So being in a family with a futurist, father, and then she ended up she's very tall, and she ended up at 18 or 19 in Africa with like a Cirque du Soleil type traveling group, and she had a Maasai warrior as her bodyguard.
Oh.
She.
Cool.
Just think of this 19-year-old, blonde, blue eyes, tall, and she took up arms with one of the villages when they were, when another,
being invaded.
Yeah, and
wow.
Killing and everything. So,
man, and now, just to move the conversation back, evidence, things like that. I think a big problem that we have right now, and not just within the para communities, but as a society in general, Martha, is we're all wearing it on our sleeve, man. It's hard for a lot of people to take in data and just dispassionately see it as a point of datum that they are adding to a data set.
Right.
Not something to confirm your belief. Not something to confirm your experience that you had.
Right.
Which, even as an investigator, whenever I go into things like, I have had experiences, I have to leave those at the door.
You do.
I can't bring that. That will utterly taint anything that I'm bringing in.
It will help you help build rapport with them.
Yeah.
For example, this past weekend, with a meteor shower, we did a sky watch. at a friend's ranch.
Yeah, you were saying.
And I had a few people over, and we were out there like 6 hours.
Yeah.
7 hours.
Oh,
we didn't even go in.
That's
and between
hot.
them, no, it was actually very comfortable.
Oh,
And we had a steady breeze.
nice.
And we saw lots of meteors. We saw lots of satellites because it's very dark out there. But we did see something that we don't know what it was. We just call it an anomaly.
Yeah.
And I haven't had
Properly.
time to go back and research from some other sites to see, was there like a stationary satellite or something? We were watching, all of us were watching, and it was every 48 to 60 seconds, you'd have a real bright burst of white light.
Interesting.
And I mean, it was steady. We did this for like several hours, and we were out there so long that we could watch, the sky. What was here was over here by the time we go in, and so it was staying about the same place, but moving.
Yeah.
Moving.
But even then, like you're saying, an anomalous object.
Right.
You didn't say we saw an alien craft.
No.
You didn't say we saw a UFO.
We don't know what we saw.
Yeah.
And I need to go see, and I can go back through some websites.
And that's just it.
Track that.
It's one of those, like, we have this want to sensationalize, to belong, like you were saying.
Right.
The idea of, oh, yeah, I've seen one too. And it can be hard to, like you're saying, look at it dispassionately and just say, yep, I saw something. It was anomalous. I don't know what it was.
Right.
The one thing in the sky that I've seen, I say it regularly on the show, it was a UFO. It wasn't a craft that I could tell. It wasn't a shape. It was an amorphous blob flying through the sky, blocking things out behind it, that was moving and changing shape. I saw it. My buddy saw it. The autistic neighbor saw it and remembered it the next year when we saw him.
Right.
So when the guy next door remembered it, like we'd had some drinks, things like that. It was New Year's Eve. But when we went back the next New Year's Eve to our buddy's house and he popped up over the fence and went, "Hey guys, I hope we see something in the sky again this year." It was like, okay, all right, we aren't crazy. That was there. Mm-hmm. But fully UFO. Unidentified. It was an object. It was flying. I will leave it at that. I don't need to take it further. It's already anomalous. Let's leave it at that and start the investigation there. Once you start putting things on it, like now you're talking literally the work that Hal Puthoff started remote viewing with, which is the idea that scientists, when they go home and think about their experiment, are affecting the outcome of their experiment. So when you're getting ready and packing gear for an investigation, don't have the location in your head. Don't be thinking about it. Don't be dwelling on it. Because you are actively charging that location right now. Like you're sticking a battery in the wall and you are charging the location with your energy to find something, which may be affecting your actual want of experiment and your actual data.
Right. So I met Orville and Cheryl Murphy. They own Board Camp Crystal Mine in Mena, Arkansas. And their son lives in Austin. He happened to be down, and they had the place, I think, 17 years, and it's open for people to, but they have one huge area where they dig that's not public. And a long time ago, they actually had this huge stage because there used to be concerts, and so the dirt is kind of elevated, and so their area is back there. Well, they noticed 3 beams of light. This is several years ago. That were coming from up there somewhere, and so they went out the next day. And then, the one thing they realized, because you just think, it's just coming from the sky, coming down or something, but then they realized that it stopped. Those beams were coming out. There was something stationary they could not see.
Yeah, that the beam didn't continue up to the sky.
So the beam wasn't going up, the beam was going down. And they had the MUFON general, a neighbor called MUFON, and but they brought their STAR team out too. And they pretty much concluded that what they think was that they may have been collecting energy from the crystals. And so the next day when they went up there, to check because they've been digging. They had all these metal, tools and everything out there.
Yeah.
Everything was magnetized.
Wow.
It's still magnetized.
So that is remarkable.
And he was just a scientist. I mean, they were just born into any kind of thing. And then they were talking about rocks falling from the sky at night. Well, when I went there the first time, I saw big Bigfoot signs.
Oh, wow.
Because I've had experience with that. And so when I went the next time, because I've stayed there over at their house and everything, my question was, is it only at night? Yes. And knowing what I know, and since then they had realized the Bigfoot deal, I go...
Especially with rocks falling from the sky,
I said,
things
those
like
are,
that.
yeah,
That's a common...
not rocks falling from the sky.
Yeah.
And the last time I went out there, Troy Hudson was out there too, and he's over in Oklahoma, and he does 5 of the tribes. Any of the Bigfoot, the elders will call him. And I met him in law enforcement in Texas.
Wow.
So I've known him for a long time. But he was there, and it's like we played with Bigfoot all night long.
It is remarkable to me. Much like I'm always amazed whenever I go to the remote viewing conference, the number of people at that conference amongst any other that I go to or sponsor, the number of people with commas and letters behind their names who are physicists, psychiatrists, psychologists, and remote viewing is what they're into. Like, that's their thing.
Right.
And, yeah, to know that the experiences that you have with Bigfoot, things like that, there is such a cadre of law enforcement individuals out there that keep their experiences very, very quiet, Martha. They are out all hours of the night, patrolling, sitting on the sides of highways, things like that. The stories that some police have privately told me of things that they have seen that they will not tell anybody else.
Well, and I had
remarkable, man. I've got goosebumps right now thinking about some of them.
And I had to kind of keep it quiet because I handled most of the felony cases.
You're handling murder cases,
and I'm in East Texas.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can see the defense. I can see the defense right now, just ripping you apart on the stand. Like so. So we notice in your spare time you do Bigfoot investigations.
Exactly.
So let's go over your evidentiary chain again.
Exactly. I know. So I kept it pretty quiet. There were a few that knew about it. And if anybody came into our department with a crazy story, I was always the one.
You were the one that
Martha,
they sent it to. Hold on, we got somebody just for you.
Right.
Well, but that's the thing, though, is that these are out there. And once again, there's a great number of men and women that wear the badge that have had some very, very strange experiences, whether it's going into a property to investigate something, be it a domestic disturbance, things like that. I've heard so many wild stories. So many. I know,
and there's so. I said, don't, and I tell them, don't worry about it. And it's, you're not crazy.
Yeah.
I've heard all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like saying that I think I saw somebody at my back window. I'm not going to call the police. Really? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I had one.
There may be a creeper walking through your neighborhood.
It's like
Let him know.
A deputy called me one night, and I've been out out of law enforcement since 2007. And I went to work for the state, and I was a child death investigator. But,
oh, wow.
But and then I retired. So I have over 20 years of doing crimes against children.
That is one of those things, Martha. I talk about it regularly. I was once again just at the remote viewing conference, and there were a few people that, like Pam Corona from Sensing Murder, and Lynn Buchanan will talk about it regularly. How a lot of people want to learn remote viewing so that they can, do psychic detective work, and it's one of those like, you sure? You sure? Because not everybody that wears the badge can do what you did, Martha. Not everybody can walk in and see a chalk line around somebody every day. And even those people go through regular therapy. Even those people go see somebody regularly because you see it in your sleep. It rents the spare space in your mind.
You can't unsee what you've seen.
Yeah, and no different than a paranormal experience. There's a reason why somebody's life is sealed and changed. It's because that bell cannot be unrung.
Exactly.
It cannot be unrung.
I know. And it's, I have a couple law enforcement agencies who have contacted me. I have some cities that have contacted me about, a wide variety of things.
Yeah,
And,
the investigative work you now do.
Right. Yeah. Well, some of them with law enforcement, they have unsolved murders, missing people. So on that, I've been working for years now with Robbie Thomas.
Oh wow!
Who, I don't know if you know who Rob. Okay, you know who Robbie is, right? So there's a show that we've been working, or he's been working, that for a long, long time, I get a call from Robbie. We were friends, but I didn't really know him. I get a call years ago, and he goes, "Hey, you want to be on a TV show with
what are you doing Saturday?
With the with some Texas cases, which it continues to evolve, and there's talks and there's contracts. Yeah. Because they'll just do contracts just to hold it so no one else.
Oh yeah,
gets it.
so nobody else can take it. You can't shop it now.
So, but we've actually worked cases together.
Wow.
Too. And, because he gets calls from law enforcement. And then he couldn't come over here for a couple of years with the pandemic stuff since he's in Canada.
Yeah.
But so there's several cases that we've worked on. And there's one that we can't wait for them to finally seal the deal. That the first time I heard him tell me about it, I've got red flag just flying up all over.
Flares, not flags. It's like a fireworks display.
This person did it.
Wow.
This is the person who did it.
Wow.
And this is one that we have worked for several years now. So.
Wow. Incredible. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on, Martha.
Well,
it's
you're
been
welcome.
fantastic.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to swap speakers, things like that. It's a great bustling crowd here. It's awesome. Before we let you go, let everybody know where they can go to get a hold of you, where they can go to find you if they need investigation done.
Well,
things like that.
Yeah, they can find me either as Martha Hazard Decker or Martha Decker, and of course I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of those. Or you can just do a Google search and put my name in. And I've got my phone number and contact information on it, pretty much everything. So
awesome.
And I've got the books over on Amazon. So.
Yep. Absolutely. And we'll have to have you on sometime to talk about those, everything else.
Yeah.
Thanks you so much for taking the time while you were literally just walking around on the expo floor.
I was.
While you are online checking out all the amazing work of Martha Hazard Decker, folks, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is our website. CuriousRealm.com/story is our experiencer page. If you're an experiencer of the paranormal, cryptids, if you have had a UFO encounter, if you are a UFO UAP experiencer or contactee, CuriousRealm.com/story. Share your story and evidence with us. We will anonymously share your case with our investigators and try to get you some answers. Stay tuned after this commercial break. We will be right back with our continuing coverage of Texas UFOcon 2023 here in Jefferson, Texas, right after this. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to our continuing coverage of Texas UFOcon 2023 here in Jefferson, Texas. Our guest in this segment is Tui Snyder. She is the author of a few books, Texas 6 Feet Under, or 6 Feet Under Texas, as well as Understanding Cemetery Symbols.
And I actually have 12, but I only brought 2 over.
Absolutely.
Just so people know.
You're here, you're presenting, you're talking today about airship mysteries. Not many people are aware of the fact that UFO sightings started long before we had what we know as airplanes now.
That is so
objects.
True.
So tell us a little bit about some of the history of airships here in Texas.
Sure. Well, for me, I had no idea. I moved to Texas in 2009. Little did I know that I was living near what is the weirdest grave I've ever seen. My specialty is historic cemeteries. I'm really into the meaning of cemetery symbols and getting people outside to enjoy them.
Sure.
So we were at a barbecue, and this guy said, "Oh, you're a writer? You like cemeteries?" And I remember what he said. It was like, "You ought to go see the grave for that space alien they buried up the road a piece." And I'm like, "What?" You know, I stopped mid-bite of like whatever I was eating. I'm like, what did you just say? And half of me thought he was just pulling my leg. And I thought, well, I'll go there and there'll be nothing. But I went up to Aurora, and I don't know if we can see that on the camera, and I saw this grave. It's like a cigar-shaped craft, as you can see, with the little portholes on it.
Yep.
I was lucky I got there when I did, because it was stolen about a month after I took that picture.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really glad I got it. Or I might have showed up and thought he really was pulling my leg.
Incredible.
So I thought, what is the story here? I do a lot of, I love going into old newspaper archives. It's kind of my favorite thing. And so I thought, well, I want to do my own research. And so I hopped into a newspaper archive, naively typed in 1897, airship, Texas. Hundreds of sightings popped up. I did not know. Within the spring of 1897, when there should have been nothing mechanical in the sky, people were seeing and describing. And one of my favorite things is their descriptions from 1897, because I love thinking, how would you describe an airplane? Well, they're so commonplace today. We know what they sound like. But back then, so some of the descriptions are like, someone heard, they thought it was a huge swarm of bees. That makes sense.
Totally.
Another person thought it was a wing beating. You know, and one person got in, that I read, more than one, got into their tornado shelter when they saw something in the sky at night. They just thought, it has to be something bad. I'll just get into my tornado shelter.
That's what it's for,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that got me, that was back in 2012. Here it is, 2023. I just, like I said, I went from thinking it was totally ridiculous to being a little obsessed on it, where it's, anytime I get access to a new archive, first thing I'm typing in, airship, 1897. What are they going to say? So I really love it.
There is a remarkable history when you start going through and looking. I mean, Texas is even now with MUFON, one of the largest sighting states in the country. We're typically number 2 or 3 in the country as far as sightings, pretty regularly. So, yeah, the fact that
everything's bigger here, you know, except for Sasquatch, I have to say. I come from the Pacific Northwest, and our Bigfoot is taller. It came down here, and he's about
a rainforest.
It is. I guess
totally different range of food.
It just made me laugh. I thought Bigfoot was going to be even taller.
Overgrowth, yeah, you know, and that's a different conversation.
But it did make me laugh. Yes, I know.
Well, even the idea that these things are regional, even the differences between sightings, especially back then. When you start looking into the regional sightings that happened, it's not like today where there are so many similarities between sightings.
Interesting.
You know, even when you start going through the pictures that you have of the airships in Texas, there's a panoply of different kind of craft. It's not necessarily just cigar-shaped or disc-shaped.
Well, and
or
you see the artistic interpretation, and then I do have one airship that came out later that they call an airship, and I have an actual photograph of it. Then I have how people were depicting it in the newspaper, and I'm like, what were they looking at? It is so different. It's basically just a balloon, but the newspaper drawings of it are, so artsy looking, and it looks so much more, it's not just a balloon that went up in the air. So I just... It's interesting how that is. Well, it's like you see paintings of an elephant by people who never saw an elephant, maybe in the Middle Ages or something. How it's kind of like that.
Now, you know, of course, 1897. We're talking about the beginnings of balloon flight. The Montgolfiers, things like that. The beginnings of us. We had just used balloons as an observation platform in the Civil War.
But that was just literally going up and looking at it wasn't controlled flight.
It was not directionally controlled flight, exactly, and that's what I wanted to bring up. It's not like we had dirigibles at the time. That didn't come around till the 1930s. Things like that.
And one thing I find interesting too is the sightings that I found that seem most credible always feature, they're at night, and they always feature a light. And so they're kind of like early lights in the sky sightings. A lot of times there's a red, white, and green were the main colors people were seeing. But I thought that was an interesting...
And we didn't even have the FAA.
Yeah, exactly. But that was one thing I found as sort of a common denominator, which I found quite interesting. And of course, the 1897 people, some of them, that's why I found preachers saying that, well, it only comes out at night. This is evidence that it's demonic. It's not of God's hand. I love reading their take on it.
Interesting.
Of course, it being 1897, we're getting close to top of a century, so there's a lot of like, this just is the end of the world, folks.
No, we've always got that millennial aspect whenever things are getting ready to turn, and even when 2000 happened, we had everything going on with numerous
we
situations.
got to experience that a little in our life, so I can relate to that when I was reading their version of it.
Now, these experiences that you've gone through and read from people, let's get into a few of them and some of the sightings that actually happened.
Yeah, right. So of course, the one that drew me in from the beginning was the Aurora one, and that was April 17th, 1897. And I, at the time, like I said, I thought that was a one-off. And this is the only crash that I read about, alleged crash. It was like 6 in the morning, and it was in the Dallas News and another newspaper as well. And they say that, it plowed into a windlass. It's been called a windmill before, of the judge. And there was a strew debris, and they found an alien body, a charred little body, a small inhabitant of the crash who was, quote unquote, not of this world. Now, this was the day before Easter, and this was 1897. And like I like to say, there's no CSI Aurora. This was, and Aurora had been through a lot, including essentially a plague where so many people had died. They were a real up-and-coming town, and then they got hit by fire, plague, one thing after another.
Yeah.
So, great, now we got this thing from outer space.
Wasn't there a boll weevil infestation there also?
There was, too, yes.
That, destroyed their entire cotton crop.
Yes.
So much so that there's a statue to a boll weevil.
It was just horrible. Everything was bad. Everything went from bad to worse for them. So they're like, great. They're worried about, illnesses too. But I do a lot of historic research, for cemeteries. And when someone not from town just drops dead in your town, you try to get people to identify it. When they don't, you just bury it. People come together, they make a coffin, and they bury it. So that's what they did in this case. So people criticize it by today's standards. Why did they save it for science? That was not 1897 thinking.
Not what they did. They were still dealing with humors.
Yes, and also the Christianity, good Christian burial. Let's give it. So they put all the things with it too.
Going through forensically and gathering data off a body or a corpse was not really a thing at the time.
Autopsies were only for criminals. You wouldn't do that to someone you cared about at all.
Yeah, there were some experimental autopsies, things like that, but it was still pretty well considered desecration.
Yeah, and you were going to Judgment Day. You were going to need your body. You were physically going to come back. I mean, I come across a lot people who had an amputation. They bury the leg because they're going to want their parts, and that was a thing. You don't do that now.
The whole concept of full corporeal resurrection.
So there's still some of that happening. I mean, not everybody, but but that was the thing to do. So we can't criticize them. But that is the most well-known incident. But I came across many other all across the state. I liked one down in the Austin area where I like the ones where more than one people saw it.
Oh, sure.
These people were out camping, and it started raining really hard, and they woke up. They were woken up by the rain and by red and green lights, and they got freaked out and broke camp. And so, can you imagine seeing lights in the sky in 1897? That was a really interesting one to me. Another one. I forget the two towns, but they were right near each other, and within 2.5 hours, I think 11 people all reported sightings, and the sightings really corroborate. So there are some sightings that I've found sincere. Obviously, I found ones where they're pulling your leg, and that's fine, and that's just part of the day. But the ones that really corroborate, I find quite intriguing.
Well, and that is something to take into consideration, because in 1897 there was definitely the rag concept to journalism.
Yes.
There was quite a bit of journalism going on when it came to politics, things like that.
And I found political cartoons using an airship to make fun of President McKinley and things like that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really great.
Absolutely, because even back then it was one of those okay, crazy person.
Yes. And there's definitely a vein of ridicule, just as there is today. But then it sort of shifts, and you get a lot of these ones where that start saying there must be something to it. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Yeah. And people are starting to go, we don't know what people are seeing, but they're seeing something. There are lights in the sky, is what they were saying.
And that's a topic that I bring up on my show regularly. Whenever people are like, crop circles, those were proven to be fake.
Because two guys did one.
A realm of them were proven to be fake. Mm-hmm. My question would be, how about the devil circles that go back to the 1500s?
Yeah.
People were much more concerned about waking up and living, making it through the Black Plague, and not destroying their crops for a prank. That was the life. So
they're not
didn't go out and just destroy half a field of crop that fed half a village so you could make something cool for
and
the
people
paper.
tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater when there is a hoax.
But at the same token, there were numerous things, especially back in the 1800s, things like that were full-on American tall tales that were made to bring people to town.
And yes, and also there's...
However, Aurora, not really a hot spot, bustling but even between metroplexes, like we're gonna go on a cattle drive and go up north. Like you ain't passing by Aurora to do that.
No.
That's not exactly on the Chisholm Trail.
No,
things like that.
Yeah, it was a little east of it, I think.
Yeah. So it's one of those. It's not like it was a highly trafficked area.
Railroad didn't come. I mean, that was the death knell for it. That finally sealed it. Now there's only like 400 people living there.
Exactly. So it's one of those. It's not like they were trying to create verve for their town.
Yeah.
Much like the death of Jesse James, things like that, where that's what that town became famous for. The people still flock there to go see the house where he was shot.
Exactly. And of course, in 1897, people did expect the newspaper to run some tall tales. I mean,
absolutely. It was entertainment.
Exactly. Edgar Allan Poe wrote an incredible, I talk about it in my talk.
He wrote numerous short stories.
Of course, everyone loved it. He's a great, great writer. So he wrote one about a balloon that crossed the Atlantic and yada, yada, yada. And then, it carries on so long, and then before long, the readership, I mean, they realize it's a joke. When that has its own, those are really long, usually really silly details. Like I found one, I didn't have time to include it in my talk, but one of my favorites was where it's a sighting. I think it's one of the only alleged daytime sightings, but they end up singing hymns with the inhabitants of the, it's just really ridiculous.
I've heard of that one.
That was very funny.
And, but that is definitely something that needs to be addressed, because even when you're talking about UFO investigation now, things like that, we have to be careful. We have to vet stories. We have to, and that can...
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sometimes seem a little insulting to the experiencer, I guess.
Exactly. It happens with crime. Someone fakes a crime, and then the other people who have a genuine crime.
We were literally just talking about that with Martha Hazard Decker.
Did Martha maybe, since talking about crime?
Because that's one of the things I bring up regularly on my show is we need to start bringing more forensic detail into investigations. We need conferences like this. We need to have one person explaining how to forensically gather evidence in the field.
Yes.
Things like that. Because, yes, there is a great realm of citizen science out there. However, the vetting of information is more important than anything. You know, and gathering the proper information. I feel bad sometimes because I've lived the better part of my life, Tui, either recording or editing audio and video, or recording like behind a lens. Unfortunately, I can fully explain most things I see or hear pretty rapidly by anomaly's sake. And here's a full-on explanation of how and why that happened. And I feel bad sometimes.
I know what you mean. Sometimes people show me, I go to a ghost thing, and I kind of can tell that's a reflection or whatever, and I don't want to. They didn't ask me to do that, so I just go, thanks for showing me that photo.
I don't want to dismiss the experience.
They're excited.
And that's just it. And we have to be careful with that on two sides, because yes, it is somebody's experience, and we don't want to dismiss somebody's experience, but we also have to carefully look at the evidence presented and what we're given.
Yes.
And it's a fine line. It's a hard line to walk as an investigator.
And with the airships, I'm not out to prove anything. I just think it's cool to...
You don't have to prove anything. It's there.
Exactly. And I want people to get a taste for the era, too, because I think people really like the whole thing about why didn't they save them for science? Just I want people to get the mindset, because I think it's important when you do historic research, we project what we do today onto the past. Even your own life, 20 years ago, you look like, why was I so stupid 20 years ago? Well, you were at that juncture, and you should have that same kindness toward history in general.
Precisely, yeah. I mean, most people don't realize that, until the Beagle sailed, we weren't really collecting things in jars.
Oh, yeah,
and examining them. That's why, sure, you hear some tales about, this sea monster washed up, and there's a chunk of fat in formaldehyde from the early 1900s.
That's true, the naturalist
things
aboard
like that.
The Beagle.
But it wasn't until we started studying naturalism and things like that preservations of things like that started happening.
It's so important.
Where universities started collecting samples and
just
things
saying,
like
what
that.
do I see here?
So, even the fact of looking at things through a historic lens, to like you're saying, to understand the culture, what they were about, what they understood, what they believed. Because if you don't understand what they believed at the time,
it shapes what you see so
absolutely.
much. How are you going to describe it?
No, precisely, because that is the filter and the lens through which you intake everything.
Yeah.
You know, that is the lens of our reality.
Your senses, but then you've got your how the brain catalogs things.
And how we experience and catalog.
Yeah.
The example I give regularly is my brother and I grew up in the exact same house. Start talking about talking about experiences.
Oh, okay. So you broke.
Experientially, there are different things in the way that we took in how our mother disciplined us, how our father disciplined us, things like that, because we have an emotional lens through which we view things.
Oh, yeah.
So even my experience in the household is different than my brother's experience in the household.
And you talk about two people having the same experience. That I've had this happen with anomalous experiences. So I grew up in a house where I'm the youngest, so what credibility do I have? I would be alone in the house in the afternoon, and I would hear something in this one room. It sounded like someone jumping on the bed. Anyway, it drove me nuts. Of course, it terrified me as well. And I got to a point where I was no longer scared of it. I was just mad because it would not do it when anyone else was there. And they were like, oh, honey, pat me on the you and your big imagination. Okay, I got that. But this is not that. And so that drove me to the library and into the whole, learning. Yeah. I mean, it got me, trying to find a way to get them to trust me. But the thing is, I've had experiences where a friend and I, so I have a place for that in my brain, I guess is what I'm getting for. If something weird happens, I write it down, too. Yeah. And I'm really big on telling people to write down their experiences because things fade. Just write it down immediately before you talk to anybody, then talk to somebody. Yep. So anyway, I had a really weird experience at this dental office I worked at where we were hearing our names, like a man saying our names and even feeling like his breath in our ear. And we were in two different rooms, and we were it was me and another woman, and we were just trying to rationalize it. I'm like, Cindy, did you call me? No, did you just call me? And this went on and on. It kind of escalated. It turned out the whole dental office, this was like a period of 3 or 4 months this happened. Then it quit. I mentioned it to her, 6 months later. Oh, Cindy, wasn't that weird? I think you can see where I'm going. Yeah. No, that never happened. She didn't remember it at all to the point where I went home and dug back through my journal and I saw that, okay, I'm not losing it. This did happen, but she had no way to remember it. It didn't make sense to her. She was really scared. I was scared but fascinated.
Well, and even the fact of people who both experience things too at the same time.
6 of us
numerous times. They never speak of it to each other. The prime example I give all the time is Terry Lovelace.
Oh yeah, I love
author
his
of Devil's
book.
Den. Amazing guy, amazing.
I felt so sorry for him being torn away from the other person who.
That's just it. His best friend, and when you write as an EMT, that's like writing as a cop.
Yeah.
You go through some thick moments with your EMT ride-along.
Yeah, I bet.
And with the guy that you're in the front cabin with.
You go through something traumatic that's bonding in its own way.
For them to have A, been in the military together, B, had that experience together, and then after their experience in Devil's Den State Park to just drift apart.
It was sad. Well, they were
because they couldn't talk to each other. They didn't know how to talk to each other about
that was horrible.
And it's hard. Like they both experienced it.
His wife, it seems, was very supportive of him, thank goodness. But Terry's wife, the other fella, I have no idea. I think he drank himself to death, if I recall. It just seemed really tragic. And that if they could have processed that experience together.
That's just it. That's just it. Being able to be there, being able to talk with people, talk to people who experience things, and understanding with that point of empathy that we all experience things that
don't fit.
Well, and not just don't fit, but that other people are like, okay.
A unique emotional experience. And it's nice. Like my sister and I, it was really great because she and I can, relate to things and debrief each other,
Yeah, no, precisely. And there's that shorthand.
Oh, yeah.
My brother and I are very much the same way. It takes very little for us to have a conversation.
My sister and I are practically, when we play Pictionary or something, it's nuts. My dad got mad at us, accused us of cheating. Because we had drawn the same thing for Matador and for bicycle, and it was just a line. He goes, what on earth? I'm like, we just know each other so well. I knew what she meant.
Yeah, no, precisely. And the stories from the airships. What was the most remarkable one aside from Aurora?
Yeah.
Inside of your research into those two?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. I do think, I believe it was the Farmersville one where I just love the one where there were so many people seeing it and it didn't end up being like a box kite or anything else, and it could be corroborated and was seen 2.5 hours apart in two different towns, and the editors, you couldn't just call someone up and arrange that. And also just some random people, like the same night, 11 different people coming forth and seeing it. Because most of them are, one person reports it, another person reports. This one was, I think, down in Farmersville. I can't remember the exact date. But, 1897, obviously, in the springtime. And I think that was one that really, I was like, wow, I would like to investigate that further. I actually tried to figure out where the different people were when they saw it. I looked on, we have Google Maps and things like that, and I could see it even looked like it was kind of traveling northeast, from the sightings as well as I could get. Of course, people not always knowing what time. Yeah. It's a little harder to get, but the gist of it, that one really got me, where I thought that would be a good one to dig into further.
Yeah.
But it is, I find the whole topic fascinating.
No, precisely, because once again, it's an era of time where it's not like there were a lot of things in the sky that weren't natural.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, at what point, because 1897 was a huge rash of sightings, once again, across the United States. At what point did the airship sightings start waning off or change?
Well, let's see. Yeah, they started in 1896 November in California, and there was a whole bunch. There was a lot of people who saw them, and they were in the newspaper. Even said either everybody's going crazy or something was in our skies these last few nights because we've had so many reports. Some people think it was this Charles Smith who had patented kind of an airship device in February of that year, but he never came forward and said anything. But then airship sightings pretty much proceed from the west, and they kind of work their way over to Texas, and they really start being seen in Texas in like late March, early April through about June, from what I could find. And some people even remarked they were aware of the airship, like, oh yeah, it seems like that airship that was seen in roundabout. And there was spotty sightings all over. I guess I'm getting ahead of myself here,
okay.
But it did kind of work its way from west to east, made it to Texas. It seems like the springtime was our real rash of sightings. And then that is one of the weirdest things to me is like you get to June and it's just like poof, they're gone. Yeah. And even to the point where people are like making jokes, like I guess his heavenly master made him go back to space, or what happened to the airships? I mean, people noticed it, which I find it was interesting to have an abrupt ending and have people just go, why aren't people seeing them anymore? When people really were, it seems, and then suddenly, nope. And then maybe then they were seen, after that. I haven't studied too much the rest of the country. I do read some other accounts.
Sure.
There's a lot of recurring thing about how there were 5 ships. Some people claimed that there was a human inventor involved. And so they said that, there's 5 of these ships. And that came up a lot, that there was allegedly 5 of them. I really don't know. But I look for common denominators. Yeah. And the name Smith came up a bit, which you think usually is an alias. But the name Smith and Wilson actually both came up quite a lot. Huh. And Wilson is actually, there's a guy down in Houston, Charles Delshow, who after he was a butcher and after he retired, he spent his retirement years creating these beautiful notebooks where he would do these wonderful, colorful illustrations of airships, really whimsical. And it says Sonora Air Club. And when he died, and after he died, they languished for a while. Finally, a relative just sat them out on the curb, volumes of these journals, and luckily an art collector found them, and now they're outsider art. They sell for thousands of dollars, but there's also a running narrative through his the whimsical drawings that says that he was part of the Sonora Aero Club that did these airships, and there's a Wilson. One of them was Wilson that is one of the. But some of them of the notebooks probably got lost. But thank goodness some of them didn't. They were just going to go to the dumpster. Which really kills me, because I'm always saying I would love to read a diary account. I get newspaper accounts mostly, really, and but I would just love to find a handwritten diary, like Pa saw something when he was milking the cows this morning that made him run to the air, or thought a swarm of bees was coming. You read those in the newspaper, but I would just love one from a journal. That would be. No, it would be an incredible insight into what somebody actually witnessed, because once again, the only thing we have is
entries from newspapers. That's just about it.
Yes. And even those are pretty interesting. People just falling to their knees praying, or, the minute they see it, or just, what they thought.
If that is what actually happened.
Exactly.
Once again, because of the sensational nature of newspapers across the country. And I say it all the time on the show, especially now. I'm going on 50 years old, and I remember when I had to ride a bike to the library.
Oh, for sure.
And look things up on microfiche and find out that, no, they didn't have it at that branch. I had to go downtown.
Get the interlibrary loan going.
Yeah.
Reference
things
librarians
like
are your friends.
Things like that.
I was lucky I lived in university town, so I had like 5 libraries to pick from, but still. Not like today. I thought, whoa, I got 5 libraries.
Well, and that's just it. The amount of data that is out there now.
Yes.
The reams and reams and reams of data. It's overwhelming.
It is.
For a lot of people who, many people cannot sift through that much information that fast. It's like a sieve at the bottom of a waterfall.
I don't think we're meant to process that much, so we have to find ways to have it curated content for us, or ways to cope with the information overload.
Well, and that's just it. Back in that day, you didn't wake up with the news from Poughkeepsie.
No.
Maybe you got a letter 3 weeks in the background from a Nana in Poughkeepsie that told you she saw something.
Or something really dramatic happened. You might get a telegram, but maybe once in your life.
And that's not just it. There were the wires, that kind of stuff, where stories would get out, stories would be... That's how national news made it into local papers.
Yes.
That kind of stuff. But we were still dealing pretty close to Pony Express.
Oh, yeah.
As far as delivery of that paper. It didn't really, like... The San Francisco Bee wasn't really...
Oh, no.
You couldn't go to the newspaper stand in Phoenix and pick one up.
Oh, one interesting thing I thought was people started to wonder what, when I mentioned human inventors behind it, possibly, people started to pester Thomas Edison to the point where he finally had to make a public reply and say, look, I think airships at best will be only toys. I prefer to devote myself. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was you could hear how snippy he was feeling.
To proper endeavors.
Something that will bear fruition and have some use in life. So he thought, I guess he wasn't a futurist. He did not think that planes were going to be a deal, which makes me laugh. It got to the point where he had to answer to, like, what are we seeing? And he was like, people, leave me alone. I did not make these.
Precisely. Precisely. And it also goes to show the fact that even back then we were willing to dig a rabbit hole. To find an answer.
Yes. Well, it seems logical. Yeah, Thomas Edison, maybe he wants to make money off it. Maybe if anyone's going to do it, maybe it'd be him.
Yeah, precisely. So where can everybody go to follow your work? Where can they go to buy the books? Everything else, Tui?
Well, the best place to go is just TuiSnyder.com. Okay. That's my website, kind of the hub for everything. I have a twice monthly newsletter. If anyone likes historic cemeteries, it does really skew towards that. From there, you can find a link about my books or anything else, or if you want me to give a talk, I give talks on all sorts of things, which I love to do.
Awesome.
Just I can like to talk.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking your time on this very busy Texas UFOcon. It's great to see such a good crowd.
It is.
We'll be taking a break here in just a few minutes, and this place will be full again with people at vendor tables. So
thank you so much for having me on your show. This was
Absolutely.
Fun.
I can't wait to see your presentation in a little while. While you were online checking out all of the work from Tui Snyder, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. Curious:Realm.com is where you can like, subscribe, follow. That is where you can find our bookstore. You can find the CuriousRealm.com/store. We have all of the books from all of our guests posted there, folks. You can also go to CuriousRealm.com/story to share your experience with extraterrestrials, cryptids, the paranormal. Leave your evidence there. Leave your story there. We will anonymously share it with our researchers to see if we can find you answers. Stay tuned through these commercial breaks. We will be right back after this with more coverage right here on the expo floor from Texas UFOcon 2023 in Jefferson, Texas, right after this. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Curious Realm, continuing coverage of Texas UFOcon 2023. We have with us now researcher and author Michael Whittington. Mitchell, sorry.
If I had $1 for every time.
I know, right? Close Encounters of the Texas Kind is his book. He was here giving a presentation earlier on UFOs and the changing tapestry of the world of UFO UAP research as things kind of progress in our society.
There has been, I think, a paradigm shift, and it just suddenly happened without a lot of fanfare, and we've gone from seeing the classic saucer type UFOs that everybody associates with Roswell and with
everything since the term flying saucer.
I think the first slide I put up was actually of Marvin the Martian, who was a Bugs Bunny guy.
Yeah.
But even back then, they had a classic saucer shaped it, so that's just been indoctrinated into our psyche as a civilization,
Yeah.
And now it's changed. Now everybody's seeing these silver orbs, and that's kind of the impetus of that book. Is I walked out in my backyard and looked up, and here was this silver ball in the air. I mean, it was up, high, but it was huge, and
that was right here in town. You live here.
I live here in
Jefferson.
And actually, what had happened was we had a storm coming, and we live in a grove of pecan trees. So if the wind blows, we could have problems.
Yeah.
So I was out trying to see what was going to happen, and thankfully, it missed us. It went to our west by a few miles. And by the way, if the author thing doesn't work out, I'm going to be a weatherman because there seems to be no pressure to get that right.
That's right.
But
only job you can get wrong half the time and get a raise every year.
I walked out on the front porch, and so you could see it in the west, and there's thunder and lightning, and I'm just thankful that it didn't hit us. And as I look up in the sky, flash of lightning illuminated this big round silver sphere, and it was just for an instant.
And you didn't see it in the sky before that?
It was dark. This was not. So I did not until I got illumination. And in that split second, like a million things went through my head of, what is that? And I think the second thing I thought was, that is a manufactured item. That is not, I'm not looking at something natural. But I called my wife immediately and said, get out here, bring a camera. And when it lightened again, it was gone. It was moving pretty quick, I guess, because it was nowhere in sight.
Wow.
And so that kind of started me on this journey. I wanted to see if anybody else had ever seen anything like this, because to me, this was weird. I mean, if you look back at all the landmark cases, and I don't necessarily mean the ones that we consider true or false, but the ones that created a cultural explosion, Roswell is one, and there's a million theories.
Kenneth Arnold.
Yeah.
Like I said, the progeneration of the term flying saucer.
Exactly. Yeah. And so here I am I saw something that's nothing like that. So I started going back through Texas history, and we go back to the 1800s. I mean, different things. Most of them are disc-shaped. Down in Del Rio, there was a crash ship. They call it, the Texas Roswell. And it was a disc, very classic, like you would always talk about them. And the guy that was there looking at it, he actually saw through a rip in it and saw the classic gray type bodies, of the grays. And so up until I saw that one, that's what I was expecting. If I ever see one, it's going to be that. And then this has thrown a curveball into my thinking. So the book came out of it, but I didn't find anybody that had seen the same kind of sphere. Now, the most interesting thing was maybe 6 months after the book came out, there's a paranormal conference here in Jefferson, in this building, in fact. And I had my table set up down there, and one of the guys here in town that runs a bed and breakfast, a friend of mine, Jerry, came by. He's here today. In fact, he heard me tell this story. When I was talking, I said, he can correct me. This is the guy I'm about to talk about. But he came by my table. He said, you've written a book on UFOs. And I said, yeah. He said, I've seen one. I said, really? Tell me all about it. And he said, my wife Ann and I, we were standing by the bank. Our banker was walking in, so we got out of the car to talk to her for a second and looked up in the sky, and here, way up in the air, is this big silver ball. And he describes the exact same thing. And he had never even seen the book. We had never talked about it, and he had seen the exact same thing at a different time. Mine was at night during a storm. Here was broad daylight. And, of course, Jerry said the first thing that went to my mind was, and one time I didn't get my phone out. He said, I just jumped out of the car to talk to this person. So, But, and then maybe a year or two later, we started getting these releases from the government. You know, like the Mosul, you're familiar with that. Where a spy plane actually got a sphere between it and the ground in Iraq, you know. And there's been a lot of people trying to detract from it and say, well, that's not real.
It is definitely one of them that has hit the 5%. Mitch, it's changed things, and originally it was just go fast gimbal, things like that, and even go fast. During the NASA panel, one of the NASA scientists had a field day with that one, going through like I don't know what everybody's confused about. Right here on the actual frame from the jet is all the scientific information we need to show you that it's an object about 40 feet going about 40 miles an hour. So that's all we need to know, is that it's something within a known quantitative range. Move on to the next thing. But the Mosul footage is one that has just popped up from Arrow as fully anonymous or anomalous, and that has been floating around for a little while now. For a couple years, that footage has been floating around. So,
the first time I saw that, I talked to Jerry, and then some time went by, a year or two, and I eat lunch, and I read the news for lunch. I try not to expose myself a lot to all the horrible news of today, but you want to read, see what's going on. I go to a portal that just has the headlines, so you can just go down through it. But the top 2 or 3 stories they put a picture with. So that day I brought up the news, I got my sandwich, and boom, the Mosul UFO pops up, and I'm like, that's what I saw.
That's it. And now, when you had that experience, of course, like you said, your wife was there. You called for your wife, so you were not afraid to share the experience with your wife.
No.
How was your experience received? Because, I mean, of course, you do quite a bit of paranormal investigations. You own what is, at least on record here, the most haunted location in Jefferson.
Some say.
Especially a book.
Yeah. They don't have a device that measures, so I can't go to Claiborne House and go, oh, this is 8.5, mine is 9.2.
Precisely. But
a lot of weird stuff happens there.
The point is, you were not reticent to share your stories and experiences.
No, I'm not. On the ghost side of my world, it's funny because I do live in that house. I've done a lot of investigations around the country. I've written about Winchester House and Myrtles and all the classic places that I've been to. And on TV, they always have these, scary and. And when you talk to the people there, which I've interviewed, all across the country, these places, they're all just like, weird stuff happens here. But, they're not running in terror. Here in Jefferson, because I write about stuff like that, I bet there's not a single business downtown where at one point in the last 20 years the owner hadn't pulled me aside and said, hey, man, don't tell anybody this, but I got to tell you. So once the UFO book came out, same thing happened. People are saying, I got to say this.
And how many people from here in Jefferson have seen at least an object similar to the one that you saw?
3 that I know of right now. Other people have seen things that are more classic UFO, but the newer things, and at least I feel, seem to be going toward whatever this new technology is. Now, are we dealing with, is this next-gen alien stuff?
Yeah, well, and that is the ongoing question. Yeah. And I fall in the camp of more than likely most of what we are seeing is ours. I am not dismissing the fact of alien life, alien craft from outside of the solar system. I would honestly tend more, much like Grush in the testimony, saying, let's keep it to non-human intelligence. That leaves a much bigger box, because once you say it's alien, you may as well just put it in a box, just like the scientists who said it's nothing.
Yeah.
You've really narrowed the playing field of research at that point to alien. Yeah. The problem is, we know about other dimensions. We know that time is just a construct that we made.
Oh, my gosh.
When you're talking the exotic tech that exists now,
if you want to have fun,
it's a whole panoply, Mitch.
Yeah, if you want to have fun, do some reading on quantum physics.
Oh, yeah.
If quantum physics is here, true magic is right beside it.
Well, I just went and covered the International Remote Viewing Association conference.
Okay, right.
And one of my favorite things to say is you could not find a field with more people with commas and letters behind their name, Mitch. Physicists. psychiatrists, psychologists.
Yeah.
And I know you may be tired of hearing it, folks, but I will keep hammering home. This last year, the Nobel Prize went to quantum entanglement, went to the fact that two particles, despite distance, can influence each other. So that changes everything. Yeah. That changes everything. So to say non-human intelligence, yes, that sets up for the fact that it may be a probe. It may be an auto-programmed thing. It might be us from the future. It might be us from an adjunct Earth in another dimension. You know? All of those things are in the realm of possibility. And to say alien, once again, you've just built a box right next to the other one.
Right.
You know, instead of exploring the space around the box freely. And I think, especially when it comes, like you're saying, to this very rapid switch in reporting sightings. And granted, you know, whenever you go through MUFON catalogs, things like that, like orbs have definitely been seen for a while.
Oh, yeah.
However,
a number in here, but not the silver kind. They were like fireballs, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Glowing orbs.
Yes.
Things like, I mean, of course, there's the Marfa lights, right, on the opposite tip of Texas from where we're at, which is another phenomenon in and of itself, I firmly believe. Because there's some really interesting things geologically going on in Marfa. But sightings like this have been happening for ages. Like you said, like Tui Snyder just said in his presenting, 1897 was the huge wave of airship sightings that really began things.
Exactly. And an alleged crash right here in Aurora.
Yeah, precisely. And it's interesting to see this shift of sightings mentality going toward that. And I don't want to discount anybody's sightings. I think it's more the fact of people are more encouraged to report now, Mitch.
I think so.
A lot of the stigma has started to kind of go away. One of the things I've been saying is, as opposed to 10 years ago where around a Thanksgiving table you may have had a political conversation, that ain't happening now. Hey, you're lucky if you still get together for Thanksgiving.
Yes, exactly.
But if you are, the conversation's more than likely about crazy Uncle Bob and how he may not be so crazy.
You know, I tell people a lot when they're talking to me and they say, you know, like, I don't go for this UFO stuff. And I go, have you ever seen one? Oh, no, not me. And I'm like, you've never seen anything in the sky that you look up and you go, is that an airplane or is that Well, if there's something you wonder about, you've seen a UFO.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, granted, I have a cadre of conspiratorialists that listen to my show, a cadre of skeptics, full-on skeptics, who are willing and ready to have their mind changed given the proper evidence.
Right.
You give me a proper evidentiary chain, my thought form will change with it. And I love that. It's great. But the one thing I've been saying to folks who are poo-pooed on the idea of extraterrestrial intelligence, what have you, folks like my father, let's say, who are like, okay. Like they said at the beginning of the whistleblower testimonies, let's forget about little green men today, folks. That's not what we're talking about. The example I give is, so you were okay with the Pentagon Papers showing that we went into Vietnam utterly falsified to make billions of dollars to sell opium, all kinds of things. So you weren't cool with that. Were you cool with Iran-Contra? No? All right. Because apparently what Grush is saying is something on the scale of that has been going on since 1935 or 1939 with your employees and your money.
Yes.
So let's just bring it down to accountability. That's what that hearing's about. You know, we don't need evidence of extraterrestrial. What they're showing is that there has been a money train going on for over 60 years involving this stuff inside of compartmentalized special access programs obfuscating funds. That only happens for certain reasons, Mitch. You don't do that to make toilet seats. You know?
Yep.
You don't obfuscate money to research new toilet seats.
Right.
That's new exotic technologies. That's things like that, yes, may very well be reverse engineered, but you ain't going to make money unless it hits a battlefield or unless it hits a shelf.
Right.
And the only way you're going to explain some of that is to say, okay, we've had access to something.
Yeah. Which, you know, a lot of people have come forward over the years and said that, you know, for better or worse, Lazar.
Sure. He's a prime one that, of course, people bring up all the time, and he is the one that I'll say, like, prove him wrong.
Yeah.
Because there's now element 115 with, oddly enough, the same exact characteristics that he said element 115 had more than 30 years before it was ever discovered in a lab and synthesized.
And also, in all that time, his story has never changed.
It's never changed.
You know,
it has been unwavering.
Yeah.
Unwavering. Yeah.
I tell you, I don't know. But you know, even he, for years now, has been saying, this is where it is, this is how it works, this is...
Yeah.
But again, that was saucer technology.
The same. Yeah, and you know, same thing with Philip Corso. And the book After Roswell,
Right.
Day After Roswell.
Day After, yeah.
Things like that, where... Yes, he definitely had a different access and realm of knowledge than the average military person. A lot of that is still yet to be proven. The fact that that was the source of fiber optics, that was the source of laser technology. I was recently told by somebody pretty big in the remote viewing community that, yes, what we are seeing, the majority of it is man-made tech. Reverse engineered things, exotic technologies, but there is a cadre of it that is different and that is extraterrestrial, that we are engineering and new engineering for the species who gave it to us, because they came to a point evolutionarily that they are no longer individual. The concept of creativity does not exist in their society anymore. In order to attain the things that they attained and to be one of consciousness, they had to lose that creativity and individuality, which means now this amazing technology, they do not have the means by which to come up with new applications. The ingenuity isn't there. The technology is, but the ingenuity to apply it to new things, they've erased that from themselves in order to be a unified species. So they're using us to help engineer new things that they can use to help themselves.
I see what you're saying.
So, interesting concept.
It is, you know, and if the Lazar thing is true, and he's been reverse engineering, he called it the sport model, I think, the one that he really got to work on. And if he's been reverse engineering that, and now we're seeing all these silver things. I mean, we may be trying to reverse engineer an Edsel, and they have a Lamborghini now.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely, and that's just it. You know, and what technology are you dealing with?
Yeah.
And especially when you're talking experiencers, when you're talking things left over, like last year when Nick Redfern gave his talk on the Cash Landrum incident. That is one of the incidents where there were physical radiation burns on the road. The people who witnessed it had physical radiation burns.
Oh, yeah, that was the first
like that.
First case where you had somebody actually sue the government because they got exposed.
Yeah, exactly.
And that one, I think, was a diamond-shaped craft.
It was. That was right down the road from where I grew up, Crosby Huffman area. So, yeah, and when you're talking about the realm of craft scene, because once again, if you go back and you start looking through MUFON documentation, NICAP, things like that. There is a range of craft that are there. Most of them are the traditional saucer-shaped craft. Many of them are boomerang-shaped, things like that.
Or the triangle-shaped.
But once again, the solid orb is what's new. Not just orb, folks, because, yes, orb lights have been seen since, like, the dawn of man. You know, I just forgot the mountain. There are numerous places around the country where you can go and see mysterious lights, ball lights, things like that.
My wife and I went just short ways north of here, maybe an hour, a little more, in Arkansas, Gurdon, Arkansas, the Gurdon lights. And it's been studied by University of Arkansas, a lot of scientific organizations. So the question is something happening there is off the table. They are seeing these round lights, and they have been for
Mount Shasta.
Okay,
that's the one that was in my head because like the natives have been talking about those lights for hundreds and hundreds of years, like since before things were in the sky.
Right.
Same thing with the Marfa lights. Like those were reported by indigenous livers and people traveling long before we had things floating in the sky. Even before the Montgolfier brothers, stuff like that. So.
But you're right. The seamless, metallic-looking orb is within the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, it's pretty new on the scene.
It is.
As far as things.
Everybody is saying the same thing, and it's the kind of things that went through my mind that night is where are the wings? Where are the stabilizing fins? Where are the portals? How do these guys see you?
Yeah.
Where's the exhaust? And it's nothing. And people can't deal with
exhaust, heat, sound,
right.
light.
Doesn't fit any of our models for flight technology today.
Yeah, precisely. No control surfaces, things like that, and even the fact of no rivets, no seams.
Right.
Extraordinary, to say the least. And there's a whole new realm of technology that's popped up. I have a whole knowledge vault on my website full of declassified government documents, things like that. One of them that's popped up here in the last year is the Lockheed Martin miniature nuclear reactor. For many, many decades, people have said, well, any of this technology that you're talking about would take something along the lines of a nuclear reactor. Well, this one fits inside of an F-16.
Yeah.
So you're talking about something approximately the size of this 8-foot table.
Yep.
That is a nuclear reactor. That is a real thing that exists. Like working patent number, everything.
And that's just an example of technology growing.
Well,
so if ours is growing, whoever those belong to.
Well, even the idea, Mitch, of got a pretty powerful computer right here, when this thing hit the shelves, it was 10 years old. By all military technology, by everything that they use and that the NSA uses on their shelf and everything else, that's 10 years old.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near 4 years old.
Right.
It's 4 years old to the consumer shelf,
right?
But not to the realm of R&D and everything else. Very little of that stuff gets released to the general public.
Yep.
For general use, and it's always being upgraded. The new specs for military use are always coming out.
I'm on the board of our museum here in town, and I got a call from our museum director. She said, my computer's out, and I don't know anything about computers. I said, I'll go pick you up one. It's something I hadn't even seen. Now it's just a screen.
Yeah.
The technology's in the everything. There's, there's no wires. There's no tower. There's no. Yeah. And I brought it back to her, and I said, you got the latest tech, but even that, the miniaturization and everything has been years.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing and incredible to see where we have come, even with cell phones in such a short time. When you really wrap that idea around your head of 20 years ago. 20 years is not a huge amount of time in the time span of humanity or in the time span of technology. And to know that in that time, we took something off the wall and put it in our pocket with full interconnectivity with the rest of the world and knowledge.
With the entire world, yeah. I've heard a comedian.
It's mind-numbing.
I heard a comedian doing a phone call between Paul McCartney and John Lennon in heaven. And John was like, so you still have televisions down there? And Paul said, oh, no, we all have our individual television. We carry it with us everywhere we go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I guess really.
Well, and, even then, one of the things I've mentioned for years on my show, Mitch, who thought we'd ever get to a point where we were all carrying a black mirror in our pocket? You wrote numerous books on the funerary industry, things like that. Our whole home became the living room from the parlor.
Yep.
Because that used to be where you viewed the body.
Exactly.
Was the parlor. And now it's the living room. But you'd have been hard-pressed back in the day when somebody died to find a mirror uncovered in the home.
Exactly.
You'd have been very hard-pressed. And now we're all just like, let me turn this thing off and have a big 80-inch black mirror in my bedroom while I sleep and let anything from another dimension come through. We're all walking around with a scrying mirror in our pocket.
Yeah.
And hadn't even given that consideration.
That was... that was a funny thing to me during COVID. And I had friends on, both sides of this equation.
Yeah.
People that said, let's get this shot quick. And other people were saying, like, no, the government they're putting something in that shot. I don't want them to track me. And I was like, you do have a cell phone, right?
You just posted this from your phone.
Yeah. So whatever anybody wants to think about COVID, I just thought that one perspective was really funny.
Exactly, Mitch. But that's just it. People, we have forgotten the realm of technology, the leaps of technology that have happened. We've come to expect it.
Yep.
And it's funny how fast we've come to expect it. I say it on the show all the time. I am coming on 50 years old. I remember riding my bike to the public library.
Oh, yeah.
To look things up and find out, nope, that's in the card catalog at the downtown library. Let me get it transferred here. That's not the case anymore, man.
No.
We wake up with the news from Poughkeepsie in our face. You don't have to call Nana in Poughkeepsie to find out what the haps is, you know. But at the same time, that also clogs the information filters, Mitch. It makes it very hard to disseminate information. Sometimes it makes it very hard, especially in the realm of new fakes, things like that. You know, AI art, everything else. It's gotten harder and harder for an investigator to, off the cuff,
and it's going to get
be able to see
get worse.
It's going to get harder and harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just it. And as these fields progress, the technology progresses with them, and we have to change the way that we look at the technology and the way that we apply the technology and the way that we understand how the technology is applied. Even the fact of being able to give ChatGPT a command to go through and sort for this kind of information in the MUFON database.
Yeah.
The fact that previously that would have been a heap of information and a crazy amount of data to pay a team of people to cull through. The prime example would be I'm very good friends with the head of Blueberry Podcasting. And they do an awards thing every year. This was the first year that they were ever able. They've always wanted to, I wonder how many people are spoofing accounts and voting for their show. I wonder how many people are using the same email address, this and that. When you're talking millions of votes for a show and 40 categories and 10 shows in each category, that's a mountain of information to call.
Yep.
3 hours, man.
Wow.
They did it in 3 hours with the ChatGPT command and found tens of thousands of votes that were fake. And it's like, wow. And he straight up said it. He was like, this is stuff that we've wanted to do, but would have taken us a team of 30 people.
Yeah.
10, 12 days to call through. And the cost of that would have been exorbitant and unreal.
Yeah.
You know, and to know that we can now leverage this kind of technology to investigate data, to put it up against known footage and see if it compares, things like that. It's remarkable the things that we can leverage now. Even the idea of going back and re-examining older stuff with new technology. It's great. It's great.
It is, and our world changes almost daily.
Yeah.
Almost every day. You know, it's amazing to me, and sometimes I'm just completely mystified that we live in the age we do, but think what it's going to be 100 years from now.
Yeah. Well, and even the fact of typically at this point is when I hold up an SD card and mention this holds a ton of information. I have an SD card in my backpack that has all kinds of schematics, things like I could rebuild civilization with some of the stuff that's on that SD card, Mitch, like computer schematics, things like that, all kinds of stuff. If I go lose that outside and it gets kicked around in the dirt and gets buried for 50 years and then somebody finds it, there's an amazing realm of data on there. Do they know what an SD card is? Do they have the technology to be able to read an SD card?
Yep.
So think about all the knowledge. They said a few years ago that there was a wafer of quartz that was going to be coming out that could hold 100 terabytes of information. 100 terabytes on a wafer of plain quartz. Oh. So when you start thinking about ancient technologies, things like that, we reinvent ourselves as humanity regularly.
My wife and I, at our house, you know, we have an 1861 home called the Grove, and we put in a time capsule about 10 years ago to be opened on the 200th anniversary of the house or something like that.
Cool.
Anyway, so we put all this stuff in it, but one of the things I did, and I thought about it a lot, I ended up dumping my entire computer, everything, onto a USB drive, and I put it in there, and I said, this is my life. This is my books. This is my finances. This is everything. I said, now you have a problem. This is a USB drive.
Is it going to be available?
Is it going to be available?
Exactly.
So I bought a little USB port and put in there, and I said, here's as much technical information
Yeah.
about USB, you're on your own. Now,
Exactly.
They may never be able to do anything with it.
Yeah.
Or maybe they'll go to a museum, boot up an old computer, and say, oh my gosh, we got it.
Yeah,
Who knows?
precisely. And that's just it, man. When we're looking at these things, when we're looking at these objects, we have to realize and be ready for the fact that we may not be able to process some of this data for a little while.
Yeah.
And
That's exactly right.
The fact of seeing it, being exposed to it, having the conversation right now is what's important. Not necessarily the fact that we can prove or disprove it. The important thing is the conversation is now open.
Yes.
Which opens the door to the technologies, which opens the door to disclosure and sharing stories and experiences.
All that's part of that paradigm shift I was talking about.
Exactly.
It seems to be happening right in front of us.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great to see, man. It really is, because we have been divided on many of these topics for far too long that, as Reagan said, imagine how quick we'd be united
Yes.
if. Imagine if this was the case, how quickly our differences would be put aside.
Yeah.
And we are right up against that right now, Mitch.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming
I
on,
appreciate
taking
it.
the time.
It's always a pleasure.
Let everybody
Always.
know where they can go to get their copy of Close Encounters of the Texas Kind, all your other books.
Yeah, of course, I'm all over Amazon and things like that. You can go to TexasUFO.com. It's got some different Texas UFO books, mine, but everybody else's too, just so you can see what all is out there about Texas. Texas has a rich history.
It does.
And so I'm kind of proud to have captured a little bit of that there. So, yeah, TexasUFO.com, but for sure, Amazon.com, anything like that. Anyway, it's sold in a lot of stores.
Well,
but thank you, man. I appreciate the time.
Oh, absolutely,
It is
always.
a genuine pleasure. being on the show.
Same. And while you're online checking out all the amazing work of Mitch Whittington over at TexasUFO.com, folks, make sure to stop on by CuriousRealm.com. That is where you can find all the episodes. That's where you can like, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, all the platforms, Rumble, everything. You can also stop on by CuriousRealm.com/story if you have had an encounter with UFOs, UAPs, if you have had a close encounter of the third kind, or an encounter with the paranormal. Stop on by, fill out our experiencer form, leave us your evidence. We will get with our professionals and experts in the field, try to find answers for you. Stay tuned through these commercial breaks. We will be right back with our continuing coverage of Texas UFOcon 2023 right here in Jefferson, Texas after this.
Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Curious Realm's continuing coverage of Texas UFOcon 2023 here in Jefferson, Texas. We have with us George Bustillos. He is actually a field investigator with MUFON. Can't wait. Next weekend is the MUFON Symposium. Like I was just telling you, we had 12 hours of coverage last year, so I'm hoping for more now that people know who I am there. But we had a chance to meet last night over dinner and sit back and just had some casual conversation. I thought it was really interesting to, speak to somebody who was heavily and actively involved in a MUFON chapter and was, you actually helped start the Rio Grande chapter,
yes, I did.
Correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and let's start getting into MUFON field investigation for a minute, because this is one of the many communities out there where I find it very interesting that many people don't like MUFON. And
Is that right?
It's strange. It's strange to me. I think some of it comes from the true evidentiary side of things.
Right.
There is always give us your account, everything else. But I think I know some people who were upset that they were made to go through and fill out a witness form when it's like, well, I have this ring video. It's like, well, that's not really a witness, though. You didn't really witness it. And I think that's where a lot of confusion comes from. People don't understand that MUFON begins with a witness statement.
Oh, sure it does.
So let's kind of start. We had a conversation earlier with Martha Hazard Decker about evidence when it comes to these things. So learning to gather your evidence in the proper way so that it's as forensic as possible.
Yes, it's all science based, and we don't chase little green men or anything like that. We're looking for facts.
And you will gladly take the report of little green men, if a close encounter of the third kind, things like that.
Absolutely. Because what we'll do is we'll take the report that they fill out, and I'll go ahead and look at that report over before I go ahead and contact the witness.
Yeah.
And what I'll do is I'll get all my facts straight as far as where it was, when did it happen, what did they see, what was the weather that night, I look to basically whether any aircraft in the air. I use Flight 24.
Sure.
I use also satellite tracker, things like that, to go ahead and determine, well, what could it be? I also have contacts with SpaceX, so I go ahead and talk to them to see if they had any Starlinks going up or anything like that.
Even knowing the local POI, the public or PIO, public information officer for your local base, because not a lot of people realize that you may have seen a plane. Most military planes don't pop up on Flight Radar 24.
That's correct.
That is a civilian tracking system.
Right.
So, yeah, like if you're living in San Antonio and you see something, there's Lackland right down the road. There's another Air Force base right down the road. So, yes, you may have popped up Flight Radar and you didn't see that object, but it doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't an airplane.
Right. And it depends on where they're from. I mean, if they're near no Air Force bases, then you don't really have to worry about something like that. But there are tools out there that you can go ahead and utilize to go ahead and say what it's not.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So, you go ahead and do that. Then I talk to the witness, and I have them go over their witness statement again and see if anything's changed.
Sure.
I look to see if there was any corroborating witnesses that might have been with them that was not on the report, like a sibling, brother, sister, friend, or whatever. And I also try to get the information about them to see if they'll corroborate the report to go ahead and give it more credence.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and verify the weather that they recall. Now, most of the reports are recent that we're getting within the past, let's say, 10 days.
Okay.
So a lot of it's fresh in their mind. But I'm starting to get a lot of reports that are 25, 30 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those reports, unfortunately, because of the fact that it's that old, we didn't have cell phones with cameras. We didn't have cell phones.
Exactly.
So most of the information they're giving us is basically memory.
Yeah.
Now, what I can do is when I do that is I go through the MUFON file, the case files, to see if there's been any other reports during that period of time. And I do a 30-day period. I don't, because sometimes people forget exactly when this took place. So I'll go 30 days on either side to go ahead and see it in that area to see if there's anything that resembles what they were looking at. I'll go ahead and look at the weather during that period of time to see what kind of weather they were using. If I do have a photograph, like a digital photograph now, which is kind of nice, I can use the metadata to verify the fact that it was actually at that location, that date. Unless it was a copied file, then you start losing stuff.
Yeah.
So I always ask if it's an original photograph, if it was a copy of a photograph, because I have gotten things like that where they actually posted them on TikTok, or they posted them on somewhere else, and then it starts getting a little foggy.
Well, yeah, and that's just it. A lot of people don't realize. It's kind of like whenever I hear people in the editing community talking about putting 4K on YouTube. It's like, that's not true 4K, right? Like, that is heavily compressed. And it's very much the same thing. Like, as soon as you ping-pong a picture through 2-3 email servers, it's compressed a little bit. Data gets corrupted.
And then also,
like that.
When they took the picture, I like to talk to them about future, if they have any future reports. Did they zoom?
Yeah.
We don't want zooms. We want raw footage.
That's right.
We want it as it was, nothing new, nothing.
Well, and, of course, the tendency for somebody is to let me get as close to that as possible for detail. What you're forgetting is that you're adding noise to that image when do it. Softwares do amazing things at being able to crop into something, zoom it out, and clear it up. I use Topaz plugins in my Photoshop for all my astrophotography.
Right.
And the things that does to clear up and sharpen an image, man. I freaked my brother out with a picture of our grandfather the other day. And it was one of those from I was 4 months old, 1975.
Right.
Utter soft Kodak picture, texture on the front. His eyes were all faded and, blurred. And no, not when I was done.
Right.
I hit one thing on Topaz Sharpen, and his eyes popped out, and you could see definition in his eyes.
That's
my
amazing,
brother was like,
it?
wow. But you couldn't do that if you zoomed in first,
Right.
And that's the main thing is when you're looking at a widescreen. Now you've got what's called a frame of reference. Maybe you have a Toyota Camry in the front. That's cool. Toyota Camry's a known quantitative of length. We now have something to measure an object in the distance against.
Now, even with movies, like if they're taking a movie, I like to have them have something ground reference or something that's static, so I can determine speed.
Yes,
I can distance.
Exactly.
There's a lot of triangulation that you can actually do this.
Yeah.
And we have the formulas to go ahead and do that.
That was one of my favorite things on the NASA UAP panel that happened was say what you want, folks, that NASA scientist ripped apart the Go Fast video very rapidly with the information on screen from the actual camera, where he was like, look, we have the speed of the aircraft that's traveling, taking the image. We have its altitude. We have the azimuth of the camera. From all of that, we can figure out this is an object 40 feet wide going 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Like, known quantitative, move on to the next. Like, we don't have to prove it's an alien aircraft or anything like that. It falls within a known quantitative range now.
Yes.
Let's move on to the next thing and quit rabbit holing. And I think that's part of the problem is that it's hard. Very, very hard, George, because you're dealing with a lot of faith.
Oh, yeah.
In a lot of this issue, and it can be very hard sometimes to present a fact to somebody that may be fully contradictory to their faith and belief. And it can be hard, 20, 30 years lived behind a lens as an audio video editor. I tend to break a lot of hearts on social media, and I am no MUFON field investigator. I haven't taken azimuths and directions or anything else. I'm just looking at what I'm looking at video and audio wise. And most of the time I can... Yeah, sorry, known quantitative.
Right.
But you have to be willing to go known quantitative. Unfortunately, I think so many people in these communities see a proper skeptic as an enemy, when really the job of the skeptic is to dispassionately look at information and fully be willing to have my mind changed, presented with the proper evidence.
That's correct.
And I am a believer of believers, but because of that, my realm of evidence has to be thicker and deeper. It's gotta be. Otherwise I'm quantifying because of my belief.
Right.
And how do you subtract some of that from your equation, George, when you start are you a believer, number one?
Well, I'm a believer, but I'm also a skeptic because I don't believe everything. Everything you see is
suffer a fool.
Yeah, right. So, I'll give you an example.
Please.
I had one person that had this interesting. They had a beautiful house in the foreground. It was at night, and they had this image in the sky. And he says, I was taking pictures of this house, and then I got a picture of this image above it. I said, did you see the image? No, I saw it in the camera. I said, see those searchlights, the security lights you have there? That's called lens flare.
Yeah.
And, things like that. And you have to be, and you don't want to, I always, I say, yeah, it's lens flare, but I'll tell you what. Keep on looking at the sky.
Right.
Because,
keep taking pictures.
You don't know
Keep taking
what you
pictures.
don't know.
That's right.
And
right.
So, that happens a lot. Or I get Chinese lanterns. That happens as well.
Yeah.
Or it is an aircraft. You can see the navigation lights going on it. And, And then I look at Flight 24 and I say, okay, that flight was there with me.
Yeah, and once again, there's numerous tools out there at disposal that even the average person can use. Granted, I've stepped a little bit one step beyond. I went out and I got a MADAR system. So I've got MADAR going in my house right now.
Awesome.
I think I've rang up 3 anomalies in the Austin area so far. In my area where my node was the one that rang up a magnetospheric anomaly.
That is cool.
It's pretty hip, man. To be like, wow, yeah. And what's funny is I'm a backyard astronomer. Like, I'm out in the backyard taking pictures of the moon, Orion's nebula, things like that. These things have happened while I am out taking pictures of the sky, like full-on observing. I saw nothing.
Yeah. You're like me.
But there was a magnetospheric anomaly while I was doing it. So it's like, ooh, that's strange. There is something there.
Yeah,
You know?
I've always looked at the night sky like you did. I've got my little Celestron C8 telescope.
Yeah.
I love it, and I do the same thing. And I see weird things sometimes too.
Oh, yeah.
when you're not looking for it,
Well,
and that's what happened. That's actually one of the questions. Go back a little. Is when I'm talking to people, and what were you doing before you were looking up? And a lot of times, if they were just like, I was walking the dog, and the dog started barking, and I started looking up, and I saw something, or someone else said something to look up, and I saw something. And it's, how did they go about seeing?
How
what
did
they
it
saw?
come to your awareness?
Right.
Yeah, precisely.
So that's always goes into it, and it goes in the credibility of the person. Like I mean, some people are looking for something, and they're going to see anything and what they want to see.
Well, and once again, I belong to a lot of online communities, and there are quite a few folks out there who post pictures on the weekly, George, and it's one of those like, my friend, I'm not going to say that you have not experienced or seen an anomaly in the sky. However, just from a point of logic, if this was going on a schedule in your backyard, you'd probably be selling tickets. Like I'd venture a guess that like there would be a Ferris wheel out front and viewing times. If you could pop it like every Wednesday night, this happens.
Right.
How do you take that into account when somebody comes to MUFON with that?
Well, I never discredit anybody.
Absolutely.
I don't want to give anybody, I take it with a grain of salt, and I go ahead and explain to them, like, after I've gone through my explanation of what I've done in my investigation, I'll go ahead and tell them what I found. And I said, I appreciate what you found, and I said, that is really cool, but unfortunately, this is what I've come up, and this is why.
Yeah.
So, I let them down gently.
Yeah.
And there are those that have come across. I had this one female that after she gave me her report, because she had my information, she kept on contacting me on different things she kept on seeing. And after a while, I because they weren't legitimate reports, they were just, she's telling me
Look at
things.
this picture.
Yeah. And after a while, I said, I had to stop after a while.
It can be tough. It can be tough, George, because we don't. I talk to a lot of experiencers on this show in many different realms, from UFO, UAP to demonology, all kinds of things. I myself have had numerous experiences in my life that, I fully cannot explain. So when I tell them to people and they look at me like I have three eyes, I get it.
Right.
Believe me, I get it. Because you were in that church with me that day and you experienced nothing. So, pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And even to see the fact of sightings where one person there sees something and the person with them doesn't. One of the big conversations at last year's MUFON symposium was the idea of frequency shift. And the idea of frequency shift of the experiencer, particularly. A lot of Kathleen Marden's work has turned to that with the experiencer resource team. And this idea that there comes a spiritual shift with experiencers. Many of them come back with healing qualities. Many of them come back with unknown knowledge, knowledge of future things. It's absolutely amazing when you start really digging into it and seeing that. How have you, as an investigator, seen reports like that? Have you seen reports like that, number one, and have you seen an increase of them in the past many years?
I will tell you one situation concerning my wife.
Oh?
My wife never told me when we were dating or going out that she actually had an experience, and she had hers in 1995. She never reported it, and I'd love to have you talk to her about this. This is great, but it was actually a close encounter. Okay?
Oh, wow.
Now, what she did was she called the police. She called the air base that was near.
What you thought you should do.
And because she knew, this air base is no longer active military, but it is active, okay? And she talked to a few of the people there. They came out the next day, okay? And they told her basically it was nothing.
Yeah.
They shut it up real quick. However, I went ahead and years later, when I met her, I told her to go ahead and contact MUFON. Mm-hmm. As an investigator, I wasn't going to investigate it, but I put it out there. She investigated it. It was because it was a close encounter, the state director took it over. Now,
she was Stephen Hudgens at the time?
No, it's...
or Ken Jordan.
Ken Jordan.
Okay.
Now, I didn't tell Ken that she made the report. She's using her maiden name.
Sure.
So I never told him that was my wife, because I wanted to keep it on the up and up. I didn't want to have any.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, but being a field investigator, I can go to the database and see what was being written on it and everything like that, just to see that it was being handled. And he did an awesome job. And basically, that report was actually used by Noe Torres. You know Noe.
Yeah.
Noe used it last year at the UFO conference in Edinburgh. And her case was on there. Now, again, no name was being, but it was her report. So, I mean, this thing was pretty amazing of what happened. And a lot of what you're talking about, she's experienced.
And
it was like and that was the first time she saw anything. It's like started when she was young.
Wow.
And actually having entities in her room.
And that's the amazing thing, George, is how many people, especially once they have experienced that close, not just a sighting,
right,
but having a close encounter of the second, third, fourth kind, the repeat of those things.
Oh, yeah.
The repeat of other occurrences with things. That is fully documented, and it's really interesting to see the quantification of that data, that experiencers tend to experience more afterward.
I think what helped her case as well is it was back in 1995, so she didn't have a camera. She was out doing chores in the evening, feeding horses and stuff like that. However, I was able to look in our database, and I actually saw a report that was filed where they saw something in the sky that night.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she's not the only one that saw it.
Well, and it's also proof to the fact that it's never too late.
Oh, yeah.
George. It's never too late. If you are listening to this, it's never too late to give MUFON your experience.
Right.
Call up, because as far as you know, yours is the missing key to quantify two other people's sighting.
That's
to
correct.
triangulate something and show it was actually there. We have a guest on our show, Father James Cloud, who is a demonologist, exorcist, things like that. He had an experience. I mean, he's going on mid-50s, early 60s. He had an experience when he was like 13 years old that he just reported to MUFON this last year.
Wow.
Just reported.
Yeah.
Just got to the point, and I mean, this man's an exorcist, Jack. He has seen some things.
Oh, yeah.
He just got to the point that he's willing to share that. Like, he comes on my show and talks about fighting demons, man.
Yeah.
But he just personally got to the point where he was willing to share that story with the world.
Well, I know that since 2017, when the release of those TikTok flights and everything like that, it's become more credible, more believable. It's not so much science fiction anymore, but now it's very possible, right? So I would say a third of the cases that I've handled are at least 10 to 15 years old.
Wow.
And that's because
awesome.
people are starting to come out and
awesome.
and report that which they hadn't did. And that's what, when I talked to my wife, I talked to her, said, you need to report this.
It's no different than saying, I witnessed that crime 15 years ago, and going to a DA or going to a detective and letting them know that you witnessed that.
Yeah.
Like, dude, there's a good 10 people a year that get off like death row, life imprisonment, because somebody finally stepped forward with some information in a case.
Right.
Or because we were now able to go back and re-review evidence with new methods, with new methodologies.
Mm-hmm.
And even right now, the fact that, good God, what is it, almost 50-something years that MUFON has been up and operating and taking reports.
1969.
Yeah. So the fact of being able to go back and the conversation I was just having with Mitch Whittington, to be able to go back with AI and put in data sets and say, call this information and pull it together. Yeah. The data that can now be pulled from that in that way without somebody like you literally right, because unless it has to do with your case or your current case file, you may not just be going through and perusing all that data all the time.
Sure.
It's a mass amount of data to just go through and put in your head if it's not about an active investigation.
I agree.
But if you gave that to ChatGPT with a task, man, imagine what it could call together so rapidly.
Yep.
You know, and now with all of the videos, with all of the UAP disclosure, Arrow, everything else, have y'all at MUFON noticed an incoming of similar sightings, so to speak? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like a Tic Tac or spheres,
things that tend to match up. One of
the things that any MUFON member, not just the field investigators, you get the what you call it, the
MUFON journal.
The MUFON journal every month.
I love my MUFON journal.
And in the MUFON journal, there's always a page that talks about how many sightings in Texas and every other state nationwide, the 40 different countries that we have cooperation with, that also list. But it also tells you how many spheres, how many triangles, how many know, and I would say there's no more Tic Tacs or the Tic Tac shape than any others. I think there's still a variety of the shapes that are out there that that are known type thing. So there might have been a small uptick because that was the one that the flavor of the month type thing.
Oh, sure.
But
even if it's the fact of that video is released and that's what spurred somebody's memory to, that's what I saw.
Yeah, because that was 2004.
Yeah, exactly. We're just now seeing it.
Right.
Well, I mean, granted, it's been floating around for a couple of years.
But general public now has...
But just now has it been the fact that they have confirmed that is an anomalous video. It is not fake.
Yeah.
This is not an artifact. This is not photoshopped. It's not faked footage. This is something. This is a real object that we do not know what this is.
Right.
And that's just it. There to see the NASA panel where they called themselves out. Mm-hmm. We're like, we have been woefully misguiding science and ourselves by ignoring this 3 to 5% anomaly, by making fun of other scientists who study it.
Right.
We've been putting a bad face on this, and pretty sure that's the job of science, to look at the 3 to 5% anomaly.
Right.
Like, that's exactly what our job is.
Right.
Not to keep confirming known quantitatives, and that's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to come forward and say. How have you guys at MUFON, the investigators, the field investigators, have y'all been seeing an uptick in any harassment, things like that, since the panels have started?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because I know quite a few scientists that I know, things like that have definitely been getting some nasty emails.
Yeah.
Things like that.
We're pretty much
you're hiding things.
Well, we're hidden in the background.
Yeah.
People don't know who we are, really.
Sadly.
Yeah, well, but they don't, and I like it that way, to be quite honest with you.
Sure.
I want to be able to do my job.
Yeah.
I don't want to I'm not looking for fame or fortune. And I love doing what I do.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to go ahead and get this information and put it out there.
It is.
And, my summation or my conclusion is not the final. It is a final for if it's something minor. But if there's something interesting out there, it gets reevaluated and gets looked at.
It gets
by
passed down the chain.
Because we do have scientists on board.
Oh, absolutely.
We have forensic scientists that can go ahead and get into things that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
We're just like the first step in the chain, really, basically.
Yeah, precisely. And when it comes to that, George, how does somebody grab hold of the first link of that chain? How do they start pulling? How do they get a hold of MUFON, make a report?
MUFON.com.
How do they get a hold and get involved?
If you go to MUFON.com, in the upper right corner, report a sighting. The first thing that'll come up when you report a sighting, it'll have a disclosure. It'll basically say, how do you want to do this? Do you want to be anonymous, or do you want to give your name? You can do it anonymous.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes somebody feel a little bit more comfortable, especially if they're kind of leery in the first place. Then what we do, because there's been a lot of Starlink reports, they show a couple of Starlink videos of, if you've seen this, that's what you've seen.
You can stop here.
You can stop here. But if not, there is, depending on the type of sighting, if it's what we call CE1, which is basically a flyby.
Yeah.
If they see a flyby, it's a very simple report. There's not too much information that goes in it, but there is enough meat in there for me to conduct an investigation.
Sure.
CE2 is not only a flyby, but kind of weird type of aerobatics, things that are not that we can't
you
do.
see a right angle happen.
Things like that, or several.
Yeah.
Things like that. CE3, a landing. Okay. CE4, a close encounter. Then we don't do CE5, although there is a CE5.
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what that is. That's where being able to call forth aliens using your mind.
Yes.
Or ships or what.
And there's very interesting things happening with that.
Yeah, Dr. Greer is one of the proponents of that.
Yeah, and I can see where people have problems with it. I can even the fact of one of the things. I mean, I just came from the remote viewing conference. Yeah. The paper that started the whole science of remote viewing was the fact that when scientists went home and thought about their experiment at the lab, that they were affecting their experiment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So even the possibility of we're going to go out on a night watch tonight. Yeah. If you're getting hyped about the night watch, you may be affecting that experiment in a different way.
Sure.
But
the human mind is more powerful than we know.
It's incredible.
So am I going to say no, doesn't happen? I've not seen it, but I'm not going to say no.
I'm not going to say no?
No, I'm not going to
say no. Exactly. I'm very much of the same mind, George. Thank you so much for taking the time, stepping away from the MUFON booth, hopping over.
My pleasure.
Can't wait to go talk to the rest of the community next week. But before we go, one last time, let everybody know where they can go to get involved, where they can go to contact you if they have a case.
Well, again,
all that kind of stuff. Or your local MUFON,
right? MUFON.com. That's the easiest way. Now, I do have flyers available at the booth, and anybody that has a MUFON booth will have these flyers. Yeah. And basically do it the old-fashioned way, fill it out, send it in, and they'll go ahead and you can become a member that way. I've got flyers for how to become a field investigator. And, of course, to be a field investigator, you got to be a member in good standing.
That's right.
So that's the first step. I've got flyers for just MUFON itself. If you were just interested in MUFON, you don't really know what MUFON is, this little pamphlet will tell you a lot about MUFON.
Yeah.
Even before you get online. But if you get online, that's the best way to go ahead and become a member. And it's only $56 a year. It's $56 a year. And you get the journal. Yep. And now if you want to get MUFON TV, it becomes a little bit more expensive. If you want a hard copy journal, it becomes a little bit more expensive. But otherwise, $56 a month, and that's it.
A year.
Sorry, I keep on saying month. Yeah, $56 a year.
Memberships.
Yeah. But, that money goes to good, for more investigation.
It's where
and we are all volunteers.
I was just about to say a lot of people do not really. You are not out there making a comma with zeros in the middle salary doing this, man.
Nope,
you
it's
are
all
a volunteer. Everybody with MUFON is a volunteer.
And a field investigator, there's a little bit of expense to it because you got to have equipment because 90% of what you do is interviews on the phone, emails, or texting.
Yeah.
If you're part of a STAR team, which is a special team that will actually go out to a location where there may have been a landing, then you have to have certain equipment.
Yeah.
So you got to have that
proper
equipment ready.
Geiger counters and things like that. Yeah, lab grade. Yeah. Lab grade proper equipment.
Right.
Man, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Looking forward to it. I am a lifetime benefactor, folks. I will tell you that right now. We are an official sponsor of MUFON Symposium. I could probably spend my money and get behind a local political candidate, George.
Yeah.
No. This is what I believe in, so this is where my money goes.
I agree with you.
I encourage my whole audience to do the same thing. If you believe in MUFON, go help them. That is how conferences happen. That's how awareness happens, all of that stuff. Stop on by, support them, folks. MUFON.com is the website. While you are online, checking out everything from MUFON and filling out your report, make sure to stop on by CuriousRealm.com. That is our website. That's where you can find the Knowledge Vault, stuffed full of declassified government programs. That's where you can find our story page, CuriousRealm.com/story. If you have a story of the paranormal or extraterrestrial contact or have had a cryptid sighting, stop on by, fill out our experiencer form at CuriousRealm.com/story. You can keep it anonymous as well, but Send us your photos, your video, your audio. We will present your case and evidence to our experts and try to get you some answers. Stay tuned through this commercial break, everybody. We will be right back with our continuing coverage from UFOcon, or Texas UFOcon 2023 here in Jefferson, Texas. We'll be right back. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Curious Realm's continuing coverage of Texas UFOcon 2023 here in Jefferson, Texas. Our guest in this section is the amazing Jay Michael. He is the producer of Aliens at the Pentagon, which you may have heard of or seen.
That one has Nick Pope.
Nick Pope, yep.
Nick Pope.
As well as Alien Moon. And the video that he is showing this year, Alien Contact, the Pascagoula encounter. This is an encounter that has popped up in so many places over the last couple years. Philip Mantle has written a book about it, all kinds of things. And it's really interesting to see this case getting really its heyday now. Even though it happened so long ago. It's
October 11th, 1973. I remember it well.
Wow. And last year we spoke a little bit about you actively remembering the case from when you were a kid. Let's get into the facts of the case as they stand and what has brought this about to the modern light that it's in, Jay.
Okay, well, for years after 73, Calvin stayed away from any media attention.
Yeah.
And Charlie was the one that told the story mostly. And he would go to conventions. He had a book. He had a VHS tape out called In Contact. And he was pretty much the face of the Pascagoula incident. But then, a few years ago, Calvin decided that he wasn't going to be silent anymore. He was going to come forward. He actually had tried a couple of times to come forward, and he would go to a convention or something, and he'd get scared. Like people like, oh, they all want me.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's
and
a lot.
He would retreat again. But this time when he came out, he came out with a book that Philip helped him write, and now there's like 3 or 4 books, and more information keeps coming out. More information, more people came forward. I came forward. Everybody came forward that had seen something that night, and it snowballed. And he found himself suddenly in the spotlight, in the UFO
right where he
community.
didn't want to be.
Yeah, but he could handle it.
Yeah,
he had reached a point now.
Good.
He's older, and he could handle it, and he was ready to say, "Okay, I'm going to tell the story from my point of view."
Yeah,
not Charlie's. Not that they were different stories, but from his perspective.
Well, it's interesting that you even say that, though, because one of the things we discuss regularly on this show, Jay, is that just because 2 people were in the same boat,
right,
in the same car, in the same living room, and doesn't even mean that person B will see what person A sees.
Exactly.
And
everybody
numerous
has
is
their
the
own
case where there's a witness and 3 people standing with them that see nothing.
Right.
Everyone
has their own interpretation,
exactly,
their own perspective.
Well, it's all filtered through our lens of reality.
Right. This conversation is from my perspective looking at you.
Yeah.
From you looking at me.
Don't do that. There's not much there to look at.
Well, I'm just saying that we both, during this interview, we both have 2 completely different ideas of what this is, where we're going with it, all like that.
Absolutely.
It's always perspective.
Yeah, precisely. And to hear somebody else's perspective this far down the line is awesome. To finally hear the other witness that was there during the incident. Now, let's start getting into some of the actual parts of the case and things that happened, things that he witnessed that have come to bear now.
Yeah. Well, there's a lady, Irene Scott, did an extensive amount of research on this, which helped Philip produce the books that he wrote with Calvin, and there was multiple interviews with Calvin. Calvin's told the story over and over again, and sometimes even Calvin himself would remember something because somebody would say something, and that happens with me too. It was 1973. I was 12 years old when I saw the thing coming in first, but somebody can say something, and I go, oh yeah, I remember that happened too, or that, but you don't just up and think of it, something has to kind of trigger those things. So one of the things that I think that has happened is Philip's been very, very good at triggering Calvin to remember certain aspects and all. And they'll go find some documentation where he was hypnotized by Bud Hopkins. And then Calvin's kind of in a position of, I remember when that happened, and I remember this, and he'll talk about it. But unless you specifically ask, he might not necessarily remember it. So a lot of details have come out from 73 till now. And Calvin's been responsible for a lot of those details that we now know. We knew the sheriff recorded them in a room in 73. Calvin and Charlie were in a room. He secretly recorded them. He was trying to bust them. He was trying to.
Sure.
Oh,
the
yeah.
gotcha moment.
I'm gonna.
But you said 20 minutes ago this.
Yeah, and so he secretly recorded them. We now have that tape.
Wow.
We have the actual recording, and they are obviously terrified when they're talking, and they're in a room by themselves. They don't know they're being recorded. So certainly, what he was expecting them to go, Psst, hey, make sure you say this, or something like. None of that happened. They were breaking down emotionally. They were in a police officer's office.
And
they're telling
that in and
something
of itself is a point of intimidation and fear.
Exactly. And they're talking about something that they think nobody's going to believe this, and they're scared. They're terrified. And all of this comes across in that recording. We also now have Bud Hopkins' recording where he hypnotized Calvin Parker. The regression therapies are there. Photos from it.
Wow.
More information. And so this case has been, since 1973, it's literally been building and building and building. And more people have come out of the woodworks to tell people what they saw that night as well. So we now have a timeline. I saw an orange light in Ellisville, Mississippi, about 90 miles away, as it came in, as it was coming from the north, moving to the south. Then we pick up Susan Snow, and she had seen something. She was across the river and saw lights and saw things. And then we have Maria Blair, who was right at the edge of the river, and something splashed in the water. She looks down, and there's this alien described just the way Calvin and Charlie described it, kind of swimming in the water next to a pier. This is right across from where it's going on. They're looking at the lights. Her husband was about to board a shrimping boat to go to work, and they see this. And others, there was a lady, I cannot remember her name. She's in the documentary, though. They had pulled up to a red light, pulled up to a traffic light, 4 people in this car, and they're watching this thing over there, and she thought it was an airplane crashing. She was like, oh, my God, the airplane's coming. It's going to crash.
Oh, wow.
And it stops and hovers, and then it actually flies over them. All of these people from different angles. There was a guy in one of the towers at one of the bridges. He saw something as well. All these people are now, at that time, you didn't come out and say you saw a UFO because you were crazy. You were nuts.
Well, even now, it's hard. Even now, it's hard. And, one of the things that we spoke about with Martha Hazard-Deckard earlier was the fact of the number of people that wear 10 stars that I have spoken with privately, Jay, that tell me wild stories of not just things that they've heard from people as they respond to their home, but things that they have seen. That they won't go tell dispatch about. Because if they, I mean, like she said, she was a murder investigator. I was like, I can see it now. You taking a report from somebody and then
they start talking about aliens.
Defense lawyer ripping you apart. In court, like, well, just curious, is this you that does all the Bigfoot research?
And then suddenly now you're a kook.
Now all the cases that you've investigated are up for review. And it was the same thing with Terry Lovelace in his situation. He was a DA in America Samoa. Like, if he came forward with his case while he was still sitting, or even a few years after, like, you realize the number of cases that would be up for overturning?
And the governor of Arizona, when the Phoenix Lights happened, I mean, Fife, he
publicly made fun of it.
I know. I mean, he intentionally. And then after he's out of office, he comes back and goes, "Oh yeah, I saw it that night."
I witnessed it. I witnessed it.
Yeah.
And that's just it. Even the conversation that we just had with MUFON, the fact of 1973. You didn't give your witness statement in 1973.
No, I never told
You
anyone.
didn't tell anybody about this.
No, I thought people would think I'm a crazy kid.
But it doesn't mean that the data that you give regarding your sighting is invalidated. As a matter of fact, it helps validate other people's stories that are involved.
Right. Because now we have a timeline.
Yeah.
We can literally track this thing coming in, where it went into Pensacola, where it was on the side of the river, exactly where Calvin says.
Yeah.
You got multiple points of eyewitnesses around it, and then how it exited.
Yeah.
So we have a track now, because people have come forward and said, oh, yeah, I was on the bridge when that happened. I was across the river when that happened. I was up the street when that happened.
Well, let's talk about what happened with Calvin and his friend, and what has led to this being such the phenom case that it is, because it's not just about witnessing a craft and where it came from and where it went off to. So let's start getting really cracking the nut here and getting to the nitty gritty.
Well, Charlie and Calvin had just taken the job at the shipyard that they were working at, and he knew. He knew Charlie. Calvin knew Charlie. And so it was like first or second day on the job, and he was still on some things he didn't know. And so Charlie kind of felt like, well, let's go fishing and let's just relax. Let's not worry about any of the job stuff. Let's go fishing. So they drove out to this point on the other side of the Pascagoula River from where a shipyard was. It was a different one, because he knew this isolated place out there that they could go off on a pier and fish from it. So they went out there, and when they got out there, they're sitting there fishing, and this blue light comes up behind them. Well, Calvin thought it was the police, that they were going to show up with their blue lights and run them off because maybe they weren't supposed to be on that property or something. And they both turn around, and it's a UFO. It's an oval-shaped UFO that's slowly descending and lands, essentially, behind them. Now, this is something else that Calvin covered in part of the documentary. I left some of it out because it was kind of long-winded, but essentially what happened is when this thing came in, it blew the windows out of his car. They had to have the car repaired.
Wow.
This is not something that's commonly known, but it shattered the windows from the inside out.
Pressure wave or sound?
Don't know.
Okay.
But it knocked the glass out, and some of the glass was inside, but some of the glass was outside. Wow. So it was like an concussion or something, that occurred. And he was telling me about having to go and take that car and have the windshield repaired on it. And that, how much trouble that was afterwards. That wasn't really even talked about. But that happened as well. So they're on the pier. They turn around. There's these three robotic-looking creatures. And Calvin refers to them as robots because he doesn't really know if it was maybe aliens wearing some kind of suit or what it would be. It's very alien looking. Yeah. They kept their legs together. They didn't walk. They didn't move. The legs remained stiff, but their arms moved. The heads did not move. To me, this sounds a lot like maybe it's a helmet, or something of that nature. He described, both Charlie and Calvin described crab claw-like hands. And the media picked up on that made jokes about their crab claw. Yeah. But it was like mittens, it was just, didn't have individual fingers.
Like my little gourd.
Yeah, like your little gourd there, just like
gourd.
A mitten.
Yeah.
And when this thing came out, Calvin describes that it grabbed him by the arm, and when it did, he heard like it had shot him up with something. It was like a hissing sound, like a hypo spray on Star Trek.
Yeah.
It was just like that. And he said he got very, very weak and dizzy and, and just it was like knocking him out. Well, the original story was Calvin was taken on board, but he never woke up. And he didn't wake up until outside the craft later. And Charlie was the one that told his story about what happened inside. But Calvin told a little white lie. He did wake up inside. He was just so terrified, he didn't want to tell anybody. And he didn't want the media attention at that time. Yeah. Because the media was all over both of them. So the way he got out of it was he would just say, I passed out. and I don't have anything to say. I just passed out, and then it was over, and that was the end of it. But he describes that while he was taken inside, he was floated on like a invisible bed, or just kind of suspended in the air at a slight angle, and the big one he referred to, the thing with the weird antennas and nose and all, stood back while a female alien came to him and examined him, and actually took 2 fingers and like ran it up his throat and up his nose, and he described it basically as he abused her. I mean, she abused him.
Yeah.
That it was frightening,
Violent.
and he bled and all of that. And then, of course, they were taken out. They were dropped back on the ground. The flying saucer flew away, or the oval blue thing flew away, and they were left there to try to figure out, what are we going to do? Calvin immediately started telling Charlie, nothing happened to me. Nothing. I don't want to go. I don't want this. I don't want to know this. I don't want to have any of this in my life. I want to go back
Immediate block.
Right.
Immediate
I want to go
wall.
back to work and do my job and go home and,
Shouldn't have even been out here fishing tonight.
Right. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Had we not been out here fishing?
Immediately don't have anything to do with this. Well, Charlie was the one that kind of wanted to, I guess maybe he wanted 15 minutes of fame, or if he just couldn't handle it, holding it all inside.
Yeah.
He's the one that decided that we'll call Keesler Air Force Base. They did. The Keesler Air Force Base informed them that they no longer, do anything with UFOs, and hung up on them. So he went to the Sheriff's Department and told them, and that's when he called them. They came and got him. The Sheriff's Department and the deputies and all came and got the boys and took them back to the Sheriff's office to get their statement. And they all described them as, they were livid. They were just terrified, scared to death. Yeah. So the sheriff left him in the office with that tape recorder going, figuring, well, if this is some kind of a joke, or if it's some kind of a hoax.
If I walk out, they're going to corroborate each other.
Yeah, they're going to get their story
forward.
straight.
Yeah.
But the opposite happened. They broke down, and in the recordings on my film, they broke down, and you could hear the stress in their voice, and they did not know how to deal with this. This was something that there are a couple of country boys. I mean,
I challenge anybody to know how to deal with it.
Charles Dixon's from Sandersville, right up the road from where I lived. And Calvin, and in that area. They've lived in Louisiana. They lived in Mississippi. They're just... They're just
country
boys. They're
just
country boys. Yeah. They know how to deal with spaceships and things like that. They even had a difficult time describing what they were seeing.
Sure.
Because, you're trying to put it in context. You're trying to relate it to something you understand. The door, the way it opened up on the craft, they actually mentioned that, and they said, "Did you see the way that door opened up?" And Charlie's like, "I have no idea how it did that." It just it seemed almost 3D. They were trying to describe something that an orifice opened, rather than a door opens and closes, and they didn't have the ability to deal with it really, and it scared them, but. Charlie wanted, he wanted to know if maybe there could have been something radioactive about it or something chemical about it, and had they been exposed to something.
That's the question?
Yeah.
With an encounter that close?
Right. And so they finally got an appointment to go over to Keesler Air Force Base, where they examined them. They took their story and all, but basically they did nothing, other than, well, that's real interesting.
Any ill health effects suffered by either one of them from
but Calvin talked about how he was so terrified, and I think Charlie kind of made him scared of there might have been chemical radiation or something like that. He went home. There was a bottle of bleach. He took the bottle of bleach into the bathroom, took off all of his clothes, got in a tub, and poured the bleach on him, thinking that,
anything biological or whatever.
It'll kill anything on me. If there's radiation, it'll wash it off. And he sat in a tub for like an hour or so, soaking in bleach, because he was so terrified that this encounter would hurt him biologically in some way.
In the long run.
Right. He takes a bath. He burns the clothes he was wearing. He destroys the clothes. And, of course, now they got to deal with a car that's got a windshield blown out of it.
Sure.
And how do you explain that to the insurance company? So, he's dealing with all of that. So after the next day when they went to work, the media shows up. Somehow it had gotten out from the sheriff's department, and everybody and anybody's there, from AP to Jackson Press to Biloxi's newspapers, all of them from all over. And it's coming in even more and more nationally and internationally. People are fascinated with this story. They get bombarded by news media. And Calvin he basically cracked. He was like, I cannot handle this. And he told everyone, I passed out. He stuck to that story because he didn't want to talk to them. And he just wanted to get back on with life. And he literally disappeared for years while Calvin went ahead, Charlie went ahead and started telling the story. He shows up on the Dick Cavett show. He goes to do other media appearances. I think maybe he was sort of getting a kick out of it because he had his 15 minutes
It's hard not
of
to
fame.
when you hit the circuit.
Yeah, and also I think that it was his way of dealing with it. He couldn't keep it inside. He needed to talk about it.
Yeah.
And he talked with everybody. He even went to see Betty Hill, He talked with Bud Hopkins. All of these people, he's looking for answers, just like Calvin was, but Calvin was afraid to talk about it. What the heck happened to me? What were these things? Where did it come from? Why me? And that's the question that always, why me? Why me? Why didn't they just pick somebody up down there? Why me? And this destroyed Calvin's life. He had a lot of psychological issues with it.
That is one of the things I bring up regularly on this show, Jay, is you think you want an alien abduction. You think you want to witness a craft in a close way. You think I'd love to see an object move across my kitchen table.
Yeah.
I have a lot of books in my studios from a lot of researchers and a lot of experiencers. Those stories often do not start well. They start like a Disney movie.
Yeah.
Where like someone's going to die in the first 5 minutes. Like something horrifying is going to happen before that catalyst and change
and
takes
90%
place.
of anybody who tells you any wild story like this will end it with, I wish this had never happened to me.
Yeah. Well, and that was the exact case with Betty and Barney Hill. Like, I'm good friends with Kathleen Martin. She's been on the show numerous times. I love her work, and especially her new work with the Experiencer Resource Team, with MUFON, and how her work has really taken on this spiritual aspect of how has this experience spiritually changed you and catalyzed you in the world around you, because
it does.
It does.
I was 12 years old in 1973. I remember this event vividly.
Yeah.
Like it happened yesterday.
Yeah.
I can recall even like little details about it because it burned it into my head. And I sometimes wonder, is it because it was so traumatic, or is it because they wanted me to? We want you to remember every little thing about this. When the orange light came over and I saw it, when it got directly in front of me, I'm 12 years old, never heard of UFOs, never heard of aliens, didn't know anything about the subject. It's hovering there.
Curious or afraid?
I didn't have
curious or afraid?
Either. But
interesting.
But before. But it's hovering there. I'm terrified. Calvin once made a statement about it. He said that it was like you stepped on a rattlesnake. You just froze. I was riveted in place. I could not move. And the weird thing was, as it was hovering, or not hovering, but going by, I continuously said in my head, don't take me, don't take me, don't take me. I was terrified that something was going to get me. Something was going to take me.
Were you a fan of, and
No.
I mean, granted, at the time, it's not like there were a whole lot of alien abduction movies.
Exactly.
Where it was
No.
we had The Day the Earth Stood Still. We had numerous black and white sci-fi films.
I had
things like
seen
that.
Star Trek.
Oh, sure. I mean, even
But
War of the Worlds
concept,
was out at that point.
The concept that you would be abducted by a light in the sky was nothing I had ever thought of.
Yeah, it's not like
and
you'd
yet
heard
I'm
the
thinking,
Betty and Barney Hill story.
Yeah, I'm thinking, don't take me, don't take me, don't take me. Why?
Yeah.
I'm 12.
Well,
why? Why would I even assume that this thing would take me?
Why is that your gut reflex?
Right.
Exactly.
And who knows if that was a signal sent to me?
That is my favorite thing about Kathleen Marden's story and her coming to this field was her uncle and aunt, Betty and Barney Hill. And Betty told her at a very young age, about 12 or 13, she'd seen Stanton Friedman come by numerous times and MUFON and all kinds of people. But her aunt told her, honey, this ever happens to you, you tell nobody.
Right.
This will ruin your life.
Right.
This will ruin your life. 90% of people, Jay, who come forward with something have zero vested interest in actively coming forward with that account. Zero. Yeah, there might be the 5 minutes of fame, but along with that 5 minutes, 15 minutes of fame comes a lifetime of headache and heartache.
Exactly.
And is it worth it? Even
I started making UFO documentaries in 2008. It's 2023, and I finally decided last year I will go out and talk about this.
Exactly.
Because age, I'm 62 now. I don't really have anything to worry about as far as anybody believing me or disbelieving me. I don't
care anymore.
I don't care,
Yeah.
And I still have scary things, that I don't want to talk about. But it takes time. You have to live with this for a while. And I believe that Calvin lived with it until he finally said, screw it. I'm going to talk to people about it. I got to get this out. I need to say what I need to say about it. Everybody's been listening to Charlie for years now. It's time they listen to me, and the book was written, and then it's gone on from there. We did a UK documentary together. We did a lot of different things. And I feel the same way now, because I've now gone on stage and I have now talked to audiences about this, and I walk away going, cool. Now I've told some people. I feel better about it, I'm not a scared 12-year-old kid anymore. I can talk about this. I can let this out. Kathleen, same thing. She needs to express it. You have to, and yet at the same time, like you said, it will destroy you.
It can.
It can.
It will rot you from the inside out.
Right.
The doubt, the self-doubt, the
wondering. What was that?
And how is that? How did that feeling for you, especially at the young age that you witnessed this event, how did it change your life, Jay? And how has your life changed now that you've made the documentary and kind of gotten your story out there as well?
I think at 12 years old, I was a lot more open to a lot more things than most people were. They were walking around in blinders, and suddenly my blinders were gone. It's like there's crazy stuff out there. And I became fascinated with UFOs. I read the books, I watched anything that came on TV. I made sure that I was there and at home with the TV on if it came on, because I was fascinated with it because it had happened to me, and I related it with also the events in Pascagoula because it was the same time, same night, everything like that. But I still didn't talk about it a lot. Until 2008, I became a documentary film producer. I started making documentaries. I have 50 to 75 titles out now of different aspects of aliens. And you go to my International Movie Database page and look. There's like 50 there, and that's not all of them. And so, you reach a point where you've kept it all inside for a while, and you've dealt with it for a while now. And you finally just say, I'm going to get in front of the camera. I'm going to talk about this stuff, myself. I'm not trying to make myself a star. I'm not trying to be, famous or anything like that. I just felt like this is a catharsis. I needed to tell this story.
Yeah.
I needed this out there.
That is the story I hear from more and more experiencers whenever I read their book and talk to them about them.
You can't hold it inside. I would tell anyone, if you have had it, once you come to that point where you come to terms with it, and you're like, okay, now I can think about it and I don't tremble. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Go out and start talking to people about it. Or find a therapist before then, and talk to them.
One of the things we speak about regularly is the way that these experiences drive a wedge, Jay, in relationships. The prime example I bring up all the time is Terry Lovelace and his EMT partner, who he had the experience in Devil's Den with. They both saw it. They both acknowledged it. They never spoke about it.
Yeah.
And that question from both of them drove a wedge in between them for the rest of their life.
Right. Charlie and Calvin rarely spoke.
I was just about to say, let's get into that, because that's something that not a lot of people realize. It's not like these two dudes hung out for years after the event.
No.
And stayed good friends and everything else.
Yeah, they knew each other.
They knew each other.
They were friends, but they did not see each other.
Yeah, it's
very
not like they
often
went to Sunday dinner at each other's
or go
house
to a movie
or go
something.
shoot pool on Thursdays.
No.
Yeah.
Calvin did everything he could to disappear. I mean, he literally wanted to disappear. He went off and worked for a Louisiana company, I think it's a doodlebugger for an oil company, oil reel. He actually had a ministry for a while.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he wanted to be a preacher. You know, he had a ministry for a while. He tried to start a UFO organization in Louisiana, and then it just kind of fell apart before it got going. It was just various different ways to cope with this. I mean, think about it. You change jobs. You go to a completely different kind of job. You even try to start a ministry because you don't really know
what you're about anymore either.
Right. Finally, you figure out, well, let's just do a UFO thing. Well, you didn't really know how to do that. That didn't work out. This is a psychological snowball effect.
Yes.
It's like, one thing leads to another until finally Philip, Mantell gets in touch with him about his encounter, and he's like, it's time to talk about it. Let's do the book. And it's been a very successful book. I applaud Philip for all the work.
We're getting ready to have him on here in the next month about that book.
Very good.
It's going to be great.
Because he can tell you even more. And then Ira Scott did all this extensive research and tied a lot of the things together. Brought a lot of this data in. Here's something that happened then. Here's something that happened there. Here's something that happened there. How does it all relate to each other? And she's brought more and more people out that saw something that night as well. Yeah, and there's a lot of work went into it. Philip's writing of the first book, then the second book, now they have one, Pascagoula Beyond a Shadow of a Doubt.
Yeah.
And that's the one you need to talk to me about.
That's the one that we're getting ready to have him on about.
Yeah, because, I mean, you got all your T's crossed, all your I's dotted. Yeah. You are ready to say, here you go. And if you don't believe this, there is no convincing.
And this is a prime example of why you never stop on a case. This is a prime example of why, police leave cases open for 20 years.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Cold cases never go cold completely.
No.
20 years later, if they get some DNA, they can match it back to that
Or
thing.
even if it's the fact of there's a similar crime, like those things pop up all the time. And once again, even the fact of we regularly, at least a good 5-10 times a year here in America, hear the case of new evidence examined. Old evidence examined with new technology showed this gentleman who's been in jail for 20 years to life has been released.
This morning, I got an email from Philip.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I'm reading it while we're getting ready to do everything. He has most of Charles' materials. He's collected it now that Charles Hickson passed away. He found a letter I wrote to Charles in 1989.
Wow.
Sent me a photocopy of the envelope and the letter itself. And I was asking him about the VHS thing that they had. I wanted to do a kind of a documentary at that time. Didn't really know what to call it because I had my first camcorder. I wanted to do a little film on the Pascagoula thing because, again, it was on my mind. It was something that happened to me. And I had wrote this letter to Charlie, asking him about it. He was asking me, were there any other letters? And I told him no after I sent that letter, because I hadn't even thought about it since 89.
Sure.
After I sent that letter to him, it started a series of phone conversations. We would call each other. And he had a VHS tape called In Contact at that time, and he was trying to figure out how to get it distributed. And he was hoping that I, because I wanted to make a film, knew how to get the thing distributed out there. And I was so early into video, I didn't have any contacts. I didn't have anything to really help him with. But we talked about it extensively and, how to put something together on this because Calvin and, Charlie, rather, it was like, I need to tell my story.
Yeah.
Because he told me that on the phone. He says, I need to tell this to people, and I need to do it in such a way that people see it. If I go to a convention, 20 people in the audience, they hear me. But, where's the thousands of people that will know about this? And so he had that tape, and WXXV had produced that tape in on the Gulf Coast, and he wanted to distribute it. And that was what, that letter precipitated our conversations back then. It was like you were saying, you have to figure out a way to get it out there.
Yeah.
And I believe that Charlie was sincere in that, he did conventions, he did do talks, he was filmed at various points. He showed up in 70s documentaries, little blurb of him here and there, but it wasn't the whole thing. And he felt like he needed to tell people this.
Yeah.
And I think that eventually happened with Calvin as well. He felt like, I can't hold this in anymore. And I think his wife talked to him about it, too. Over the years, she was like, honey, you can't keep this all pent up. Yeah. You got to talk to people.
You got to talk to somebody other than me about it.
So when Philip approached him about writing the book, he said, okay. And they talked and conversation. I don't know about you, but it's hard to write a book.
It ain't easy.
Yeah.
It ain't easy.
And multiple conversations. Finally, the book comes out. Now we know Calvin's side.
Yeah.
We didn't know that before.
And not just that, but once again, it's the opportunity, now that we know Calvin's side, to go back with new evidentiary means, new ways of looking at evidence and testimonies and everything else, new ways of examining all of that, and repiecing it back together with a new integral facet to that gem of a story.
I'm convinced that Keesler Air Force Base, at the very least, made a file. Because, first of all, they went there, and they examined them for radiation and all. They interviewed them. They talked with them. They asked them multiple questions. But I believe that Keesler Air Force Base has some kind of documentation around that time period on file somewhere, and I would love to get my hands on that.
That would be
I would
an
love
incredible
to see
piece of
what
gold.
they thought,
Yeah.
Because you got two guys shows up here, adamant that check us for radiation. There's something wrong. There's something happened to us. And though they may have treated it like, it's a UFO story or whatever, some of them were very serious.
Yeah.
And I know you don't do anything with the Air Force that doesn't get written down.
Yep.
I mean, it's all in
all
a file
documented
somewhere.
It's all documented.
Yeah. So I would love to see that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And speaking of love to see, I cannot wait till this evening after dinner when we get to watch Alien Contact, the Pascagoula encounter.
Yeah.
Let everybody know where they can go to get their copy of this. I know I got mine on Amazon. I got one from you last year, all kinds of things.
You can watch it for free on YouTube, but you kind of have to dig it up. You got to search the exact title.
Yeah, make sure you're getting, and it will have this artwork, folks, just so you know.
Yeah, it'll have
look
that artwork.
for that artwork.
And so you can watch it free on YouTube. Tubi has it, I think.
I want to say it may be on Freevee as well, if I'm not mistaken.
It may very well be. I don't know all of them, but I know there are streaming services out there that it's either a couple of bucks pay-per-view or you can watch it for free.
Yeah.
But it's available. But if you want the DVD, then go to Amazon.
Absolutely.
Because they produce the best version.
Yeah. And thank you so much, A, for coming on, talking about this topic. B, doing this incredible documentary. I can't wait to see everybody's reaction to it tonight. I watched it a couple times before the event. I got it from you last year and watched it.
Right.
And then whenever he mentioned it, I was like, let me go onto Amazon and buy it. 2 days later, I went through and started reorganizing all my bookshelves from guest stuff and found your DVD.
Yeah.
I was like, look at that. I already had it.
You already had it.
I could have ripped it. So, but yeah, amazingly well done. Very, very well researched. Thank you so much for all your work, all your films. Very well done, Jay.
Thank you.
Always great talking with you here at the conferences. While you are online, checking out all of the work from Jay Michael and getting your copy of Alien Contact, the Pascagoula encounter, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is the website where you can like, subscribe, comment. It's where you can find all the episodes. That's where you can find our declassified vault, the knowledge vault full of declassified government documents. It's where you can also find all of the books and videos from our guests right there at CuriousRealm.com/store.
And if you want to find me online on Instagram, I'm JMichael_official. I'm J Michael on Facebook, and I keep a Twitter account. Don't use it very much.
Yeah.
But
I can appreciate.
I can be found. Yeah.
Well, Make sure to tune in, everybody. We will have our continuing coverage, the last bit of coverage from Texas UFOcon 2023 here in Jefferson, Texas, coming up right after these messages. We'll be right back, folks. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to our final bit of coverage from Texas UFOcon 2023 here in Jefferson, Texas. It has been an amazing conference. Nick Redfern is on stage right now giving a presentation about the Men in Black. We just got finished hearing about Texas airships from Tui Snyder a few minutes ago, and our good friend Daniel Allen Jones is here. He gave a great presentation earlier. Let's get into a little bit of that and a little bit about your upcoming book about Aurora, Daniel.
Yeah, well, Chris, always glad to be able to come back, and so much interesting discussion as of late when it comes to this topic, and what not a better time to be able to have an event like this after congressional hearings, after the NASA panel. People are wondering what's going on, and I think it's important that we continue events that allow people to come in and be curious, ask questions, and open up the dialogue when it comes to these fascinating topics. So it's something that when we have presenters, they'll each talk about different presentations, research, things that help us kind of see that there's so many facets to this phenomenon, that it's not a singular issue. It's so multifaceted that we want to make sure that we can research all the angles that we're able to, whether it's through looking into historical records, like you mentioned with what Tui Snyder's doing with her work into the airship mystery, as well as some of the things like what Nick's talking about right now with the Men in Black. Does the government have an agency that's going out and intimidating people to, shut up about some of their sightings?
By the recent testimony from Grush, the actual whistleblower, yes, there is an intimidation group. There is a group that goes around on behalf of contractors and says, you shut your mouth, apparently. There have been numerous people from his testimony that have been threatened, whose lives have been threatened, whose livelihoods have been threatened. So whether it's Men in Black or not, the answer is yeah. There are people whose job it is to come strong-arm you from telling your story.
Right, and I think it's something that we can see has probably had an effect on those who could have come forward over the years and may not be around anymore to do so, but at least there are some who seem to have firsthand knowledge and able to hopefully get before Congress and share with the world some of this incredible stuff that I think people need to know. They deserve to be given to scientists, and hopefully not just claims, but the actual materials that they can use to work on and give us a better understanding and as I always like to say, sort of elevate the standard of awareness about this reality and society in general. So that has a lot to do with what I was presenting on just earlier about the cultural issue of how we interpret things throughout time, what we're looking at now, and what it could mean for us in the future if we, in the event that we declare that non-human intelligence is real in whatever form, whether we think of it as aliens, as spirits, as something interdimensional.
Time or space travelers through rifts in dimensions.
Right.
Whatever.
There's so many different ways that people have considered what's going on. And again, I don't think it's a singular issue. It's not just one type of UFOs out there that's doing this or that. It could be a number of different things, and we just have to be considerate that whenever this is integrated into society, it's something that doesn't shift all at once. It's something that we have to have a period of acclimatization, and that might happen in increments over many years. And as we can see, a lot of the social activism movements throughout the last century, it doesn't all change at once. It takes a generational effort to go through and help to integrate things and concepts and new understandings, maybe not as quickly as we'd like. And I know a lot of people who've been following along with this subject of ufology for a long time. We sometimes anticipate that disclosure is just going to happen and it's all going to change. But in reality, even if a big announcement was made, it's not going to instantly change, I think, the entire world and maybe much at all at once. It would probably take a gradual shift in focus and in how it's a practical way for us to understand a declaration like that. And so while I think many people eagerly await some kind of declaration to the effect of not just my fellow Americans, but citizens of the world, we're not alone. I think that would be a monumental effort, and I don't think it belongs to one person to make that announcement.
No.
I think it should be a concerted effort by a group, a collective of leaders,
multinational consortium,
and not just politics, politicians necessarily, but scientists, sociologists,
religious
artists,
leaders,
people that have really I think a place in our society, our world society, who can help to encourage a social influence, not just to make people believe or to convince people of something or other, but to help to integrate this idea of that we're not alone in society in a way that's it's not invasive. It's not going to be as threatening as if we just have someone come up and say there's aliens and they're here to invade, because that would cause a lot of calamity.
It would go straight back to Brookings' report. Yes, we would have a situation on our hands, and I don't care. Prime example, let people know that we're going to shut things down for 2 weeks. See what happens to the toilet paper supply.
Right.
Like we've literally just seen this panic across the world. Shelves emptied, things like that. You go and tell the world that this is the case, and I'm not saying that we are not in a different place than we were 50 years ago as a humanity, but we are still panicking animals, Danny.
Sure.
We are still panicking animals as a whole.
I think, and in some way we're opportunist. If this were to be announced and the manner in which it were to be declared, I think has an effect on how people would respond.
Yes.
If they came out and said, we've discovered non-human intelligence, and they're vastly more intelligent than us, but they want to share their wisdom and their technology, people would say, wow, well, it's about time. But if they came out and said, and they're here to invade, and they're going to, do all these things, it would be a little bit more scary to think that people would respond in a way that's calm and is collected if they said, they don't seem to be evil, they seem to be peaceful. And I think it's just the way in which it's said and conveyed to the public has an effect on what we do in response.
Oh, absolutely. Even the fact of, yes, like we had the private conversation last night, the idea of them using the term non-human intelligence. So beautiful, so awesome. I've said it so many times on this show. If you say that is an alien craft, when you see it, that is no different to put that sighting in a box in that way than it is for a scientist to say, that's not science.
Right.
It doesn't fit in this cube of science that I was taught as a cube of science. It doesn't go in there. It goes in the other bin.
Right.
It's bin B, and it's no different to have a sighting, have an experience, and to pigeonhole it. Not to leave the experience open to interpretation, to debate, to evidence, everything else. And even the NASA panel, the scientist who worked very shortly and rapidly with the Go Fast video to, hey, look, here's the azimuth, here's the distance. Like, with all this, we can do the trigonometry to show it's 40 feet, going 40 miles an hour. Known quantitative. Next. You don't have to prove what it is. No, through all the steps, you have proven qualifiable. No need to consider this an anomaly anymore. Move on to the next piece of data. If you keep digging and rabbit holing on the same thing, you're ignoring a whole panoply of things over here that still need investigation.
Right. Well, I think that's a really important part for us to understand that, with all of these things that we're finding that are being presented and considered, even at official levels and that capacity, it seems like there could be a lot that hasn't been released or declassified that, there are a number of reasons why, and maybe not just because of the content of what could be having been captured, but the ways in which we can utilize the instruments and measurements and technologies to do that capturing, I think is more of a risk to be released than the content itself sometimes, is what it seems like has been discussed.
Well, precisely, and I think that's a point. That's a very, very huge point to make, Daniel, because most of these videos are coming off military platforms. We cannot very well put every piece of data up on that screen to let the enemy examine it and know the technology that we are using to get that video.
Right.
So you've got to be very careful about which videos you let out, because, yes, it may release our capabilities fully.
It's something that we have to keep in mind, because right now we have a few videos that have been released over the years, and nothing too incredibly compelling or convincing. It might be compelling to some people, but the level of being convinced, I think, isn't quite there because we're still dealing with grainy, low-quality videos. And unfortunately,
even coming off military aircraft and everything else, they're still pretty grainy and low quality.
And people have come up with ideas as to why and insinuate that it's difficult to capture some of these exotic propulsions technologies because it's creating sort of a illusory effect. And maybe that can be the case. But what I would say is important to keep in mind in that regard is that with what some people say is more along the lines of important to look at by way of defense secrecy and airspace. If we have things flying around, if that's the idea, if they're appearing in the sky, if they're flying around, or they're just doing whatever they're doing, navigating by whatever means, unbeknownst to our pilots, even commercial pilots, that could be deemed a threat to airspace, not because they're here to invade necessarily, but because we don't want pilots to run into things that they don't know are there or not.
No different than you flying your drone at 3,000 feet without an FAA permit.
Yeah.
You know?
So I think
you could go out and buy the drone, I'm sure. I guarantee you, I can hop onto eBay and buy any drone I want. Is it legal for me to put it up that high in the air? Oh, hell no, not without an actual pilot's license.
Right.
You have to get a pilot's license just like a pilot flying a Piper Cub at that height. You know? So, And,
well, just for sake that I think is important as a bit of continuity on your show, you've got Gort here, and we were just talking last night that The Day the Earth Stood Still, the remake, was on just last night. Here we are at the Texas UFOcon, and just fun to see that movie was on last night. But there was a scene where they're talking about how these spheres are coming down, and they're asking these questions, and Madam Secretary says, "I think we're asking the wrong questions. They disabled our defense satellite system," and that tells us something about their intention. And however the movie plays out is interesting itself, but that notion, I think, assessing if something were to happen and a defense satellite or something, or whatever kind of equipment is deactivated or whatever happens, they seem to have the impression that it gives them an idea about the intentions and motives. So whether that case in the movie plays out in real life or not, it's something we have to consider, that whatever we see happen with non-human intelligence and the potential interactions that people are having or have had in the historic past or might continue to have here in the future, it's something that we'll interpret through our own lens of society and the ways that we see things through human perspective. Will kind of personify in the event that things happen, whether their intentions or this or that, we'll still interpret it, good or evil, or all these different simple dividing issues that I think we should keep in mind, that if there are societies that are advanced or however sophisticated out there, that they probably were able to come across understanding certain ideas about their own technology, the implications that they face regarding destroying themselves or not. And so some people, scientists have considered that, there's this idea that societies can only reach a certain point until either they blow themselves up, they kill themselves off, or they've reached a point past warring with each other to be able to be more altruistic and get past that. So I think a big focus for myself, at least lately, in this idea of looking at how we as people interpret the phenomenon, and how the phenomenon itself, let's just say potential civilizations, interact in a way that we have any degree of relatability to by our own culture. So the whole idea of what I presented dealt with cosmic anthropology. And in two ways, what we can think of as learning as much as we can, when and however we can, about other civilizations and the way that they operate, interact, their practices, beliefs, technologies, all of that. Simply because those are the things what we do here in our own human societies. So the other half of that is how we understand a lot of these types of concepts, how it affects us, and how we integrate new understandings in a way that kind of changes our own reality, hopefully for the better. But if we are able to kind of make sense of certain challenging things in nature, as all of history, for humanity has led us into, sometimes when we get past that, dark, mysterious issue, we're propelled forward, and we can understand it, we can utilize it, we integrate it, and we can somehow maybe engineer it into a constructive point in society that's either helping in some way or another. And I think that's important to consider, that if there are groups out there or here that we can learn about their ways of life, and that maybe scientists have an opportunity to expand upon the anthropological implications for both ourselves, humanity, and what we can learn from other groups that have made it as best as they can, wherever they are and where they're from. That should help us in a lot of ways, and I think that's kind of one of the things that New Frontiers in Science can help have a framework set in place for.
Yeah, no, precisely, because our new technologies, the new things that we have, give us whole new realms by which to examine old data, whole new realms by which to examine old evidence. A prime example, Daniel, to tie the two topics together of new things, looking at stuff new ways, and the threat. One of the many things that's been brought up in numerous of these panels has been the Malmstrom Air Force incident. And the fact that, there was a large craft that at one point shut down Missile Command at Malmstrom and took a good chunk of our nuclear arsenal at the time offline. Like you said, direct show, direct intention. It's either one of two things. Don't use these, or look at what we can do to your toys. But a lot of the conversation has been centered around, even last year, the MUFON Symposium was friend or foe. That was the theme, because that was a lot of the questions coming out of the first UFO UAP panel was, are these friendly? Are they not? Are they posing a threat? And now the conversation in the last whistleblower panel was, they are posing a threat. They have been recorded over our training ranges. This is dangerous. They are in the civilian skies. This is dangerous. You do have to kind of wonder, is that the call for militarization of the topic? Is that the call for, sure, we're trying to hunt this money down, but maybe we need to release some money to get things ready on another end.
Right.
And I can see where people get nefarious with that thought pretty quick whenever it comes to the first thing being the protection of airspace and everything else.
Yeah, and I think these are all important things to consider. Now, one of the things we do as humans is we personify concepts, we extrapolate them, and sometimes people say we shouldn't do that because we're looking at it through the eyes of a human. And I mean, in reality, that's really all we have to do to try to make sense of in some way. And I think it's okay to do that sometimes, but also keep in mind that the ways of thinking, modes of life can be drastically different all over the universe, and
they're drastically different all over the world.
Right, and so when we see how we interpret intention, it sometimes gets misconstrued because of something that we perceive that could have been deemed negative or bad or evil. Just as if we're walking outdoors and we step down, we feel something, we look, we accidentally step like in an anthill. Maybe we didn't mean to do that, but obviously it's caused an extremely devastating effect on the ant civilization.
Community.
Did that necessarily imply that we meant to go and do that? Well, for us, no, not necessarily, but to them, that's a whole other series of things going on. But can they even interpret that some other being did that and intended to or not? That's a whole other set of questions. But the reality is that, let's say if it were people, they might interpret that as an incredibly devastating event that can be interpreted in many ways. I think that it's important to see that throughout a lot of the experiences that are shared throughout all of history, that you have a myriad of things all over the spectrum of they're evil, they're demonic, to their angels, to their advanced civilizations, their advanced spiritual dimensional beings, and in reality, I think that these are all just lenses of cultural perception that we try to make sense of through what we understand in our own lives, and it's not to say that they're either right or wrong, but they're just ways that we try to cope with our own reality best we can. And so I think the more we learn about these different types of phenomena, if there are intelligence behind some of them, because I think there's not just one explanation, but if there are other civilizations out there in the universe, not just out in space by planets, but just in other dimensions and other realms, all of these things that they somehow sustained their existence long enough to probably have to be considered about some challenging things that maybe we in some way can look at in a similar existence of trying to make sense of resources, of different groups within our own communities that don't always get along. So how do we overcome those things? I think that we can learn a lot from historical examples of our own people, our own ancestors, but at the same time, we live in a completely different existence of society and technology and resources. Everything's more accessible to everybody than ever, and I think that as we continue to go forward, it's important that when we deal with something to the effect of introducing the a concept of non-human intelligence, whether that comes in the form of aliens, terrestrial-based non-human intelligence, or something that we try to talk about as being dimensional and whatever that can mean for people, it's important to know that it's not just an opportunity for us to study all of that, although that can be fascinating. It does have an effect on how we understand each other, our role in the universe, and how we're all connected into our own world.
And the danger is always, Daniel, is that distillation mentality. Once again, we want to put something in a box because when it's in a box, we can look at it, we can hold it, we can understand it easier. It's not some nebulous concept, and right now there's an issue going on in our society where we're having a problem with a definition, and we're having problem with putting things inside of a box. Instead of leaving it open-ended, instead of leaving the conversation open-ended, we want it in a box.
Right. Well, you mentioned the testimony of David Grutch here at the July 26th congressional hearings, who mentioned non-human biologics. And that term itself is curious because they didn't say alien. In some ways, they did talk about certain things I think can be taken out of context and, of course, ran with and embellished. But I think the wording itself was a curious choice. If not anything else, it wasn't that he said, we've got aliens, that we've got extraterrestrial spaceships necessarily in the way that had been described a little bit more in some of the news interviews that he had done a little bit before that. But when you're in front of Congress and you know that there are many people who are otherwise maybe just disinterested or unfamiliar with this topic, hearing this stuff for the first time maybe, that it makes us wonder what would have been different if he had said alien rather than non-human biologics.
You would have been giving a definition to something that you don't know. You don't know. He never saw the craft. He never saw the bodies. All he has is the testimony of people who have and who have said the money has been obfuscated to do this.
Right.
So to say this is alien, he would have been absolutely talking out of step. But once again, to use that non-human biological entity concept, or non-human biological intelligence, rather, fantastic, because that steps it into the realm of, is it a cybernetic organism that has been made to go and gather data? Probe-like, things like that. We striate things a whole lot more that way. It's not just one lump sum of it's this or it's nothing. Now, there's an open rainbow of possibilities of what it could be by using that term.
Right. I think it should make us wonder when the term biologics is used. I mean, it's contextual. Biologics typically refers to something in the pharmaceutical industry and products that are manufactured for different purposes. In the context that David Grutch was using it, I think it's important to consider that something biological typically is organic. And
or has organic matter.
Yeah, exactly. And so it implies something. It's not just that he said we've got non-human intelligence only.
Yes.
But non-human biologics could be that that there are life forms that have not yet maybe transitioned beyond their organic form, but could augment it, just as we do now. We augment ourselves with all kinds of things. We're basically cyborgs in some way, primitive cyborgs, but we're making all kinds of technological advances in all of that to help bridge the gap between an organic and synthetic type of existence.
They just released the first computer chips that used actual organic brain material inside of them.
Wow. I mean, just right there, you can see that it makes us wonder with a civilization that could have a little bit of an upper hand on anything we're doing, that maybe they have surpassed, and this is obviously very theoretical and speculative, but we could see how maybe an advanced civilization that's got seemingly unlimited resources, but still, to the effect that they can only sustain their organic existence as long as permissible through their own means, that maybe they found some help along the way to prolong their longevity, and in doing so, we do the same things, or we'd like to, and I think that it makes sense that you would consider that if there are other biological intelligences, that they would probably find ways, whether we interpret that as technology or medicine or life-enhancing, applications. I think that it's reasonable to assess that some of these things we could potentially be coming across are not only biological in nature, but also could have some kind of synthetic component likened to what we are doing now with AI or with machine learning. A lot of what we see in our own domain of all of those things is already advancing so much. It's hard to consider or fathom a civilization that's had not just a few thousand years, but maybe millions of years to work and to come and go and to be brought back.
Well, even the idea that we were talking about last night from the conversation that I had at the remote viewing conference from the gentleman who was like, yes, quite a bit of what we're seeing is fully explainable contractor material, things like that. But there is a slice of it that, yes, has been given to us by extraterrestrial civilization, and it has been given to us in a cooperative effort because over the millennia of them building themselves to the neurologic civilization that they are, no need for communication the way we grunting apes do it with our mouths, things like that. Because of all this high technology that they built and had to come together as a species to make happen, they have lost their individuality and creativity and no longer know how to use this amazing technology with new applications. They need us creative little monkey guys to take care of that for them. Because we see things and we see 85 different applications, 85 different uses. They have specialized their world and their species so much that creative side of a new way to use old technology doesn't even click in there. And that's pretty remarkable to think about. If you think about that hypothesis,
right?
That is utterly the case.
It's a bit of irony to consider that something we would consider so highly advanced is so out of tune with the ideas that come so naturally to us as humans.
Daniel, though, think about that in reference to us as humanity. Even the fact of aliens built the pyramids. Way too complex. Way too really? I don't know. I think that's very dismissive to think that people like Archimedes didn't exist, who were thousands of years ahead of their time as far as the technology that they came up with working in the Bronze Age. I think that really discounts the ingenuity of humanity and the fact that we have come up with these solutions numerous times and then didn't use them and then forgot about them. I mean, the example I use on the show all the time is woodcraft. In our grandparents' age, you could have gone out just about anywhere in this countryside, right here in Jefferson, taken a 6x6 plank to someone and gone, I need a spiral column in a couple weeks. No problem. Here's a quote. Yeah. How about now?
Not so much.
Could you go find that dude to hand carve you a column? That is not amazing technology. That is a crafting skill using things like an adze that go back to medieval times, man.
Yeah.
You don't need modern technology to make that happen. What you need is the knowledge of how to do it.
Right. It seems like these days you would just have to find someone with a 3D printer to hit a button and crank them out.
But that's the thing. And at what point did we need a column? Do we not have a 3D printer anymore? And now we just don't know how to make a column.
Yeah, it's very eye-opening to consider that and this could all go away, and we have lost a lot of that knowledge. And it's really important to keep a lot of those things in mind, that we look back and we see, we're told that, civilization is like slowly rising up from city-states to nations, but really we look back in history and it's like we see ruins of majestic monuments and things that make us wonder, like, how did we do that?
We don't have to go back that far, though, is what's funny. Like, hey, I'm Cajun. That border is 40 minutes to the east of us right now to hit Cajun country in Louisiana, where they literally speak a different language that is native to America. Nowhere else. That is a 15th century form of court French mixed with Native American. That's Cajun. It is a unique language to that region of America only. One generation, Daniel, it's almost gone. Yes. One generation is all it took for an entire race of people to forget their language that they have had since the 15th century. If you take a Cajun to France and have them speak Cajun to them, a French person will look at them like they are insane, despite the fact that they are pretty well speaking unchanged court French from the 15th century. Theirs has changed numerous iterations. The Cajun language has not.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating.
It's a prime example of, like, it doesn't take long for us to forget.
Right. It's fascinating. It's also very unfortunate that does happen, and we lose a lot along the way from all the different groups out there who have completely been either assimilated or just completely disappeared because of any number of things. And that we could have a
oral
lot of
traditions, all kinds of things.
A number of things out there that help us to give insight on a number of things which we find mysterious and incredible. But I hope that as we continue to improve both in society, technologically, and spiritually, philosophically, however, that we're open to the possibility that we'll still be able to have light shed upon things using historical records and historical information, along with new data and new methods of research. And so I'm hopeful that we can continue to make those discoveries, and in doing so, not learn about just those types of phenomena, but about how we can work together in our own culture and humanity as well. And that's been a big focus of mine when it comes to the anthropological implications.
That's why I love talking with you, man, because if we aren't having this anthropological conversation, we can come up with all the data and technology we want. What are we as a humanity doing with it?
Right.
Like we can change the world around us, man. The question is, are we? Are we? And unless you're having the conversation, you're not. You're not. You are a stymieing point for humanity at this point. To not have the conversations at this point in humanity will do us no good. We have to have the hard conversations now, because it's happening. It's no longer a situation of, 20, 30 years from now. Like, it is happening now. By the time my son is in college and he's 6, right now, man, like 15 years from now, I can't even imagine what we're going to be dealing with technologically and philosophically and theosophically with this topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing to see even in the last decade, and I think that it'll continue to be that way, and the universe is full of surprises. I think that it's a humbling experience to make those discoveries in a way that's not startling. I think it's one of those issues where we are either repelled backward because of something that we want to say no, that's too much for us to handle, or it'll propel us forward and say, now that we understand it better, let's embrace it, move forward with it, and do what we can to work together. And I think that's important, that we can open this dialogue up. It opens people's minds and their hearts to the possibility that not only are we not alone, but we can find this as a common ground for us to work together to see if someone else can do it out there, maybe we can too.
This is the common ground, Daniel. This is the common. If you're looking for the common ground, this is it. This is it. This is what gets beyond politics.
Yeah.
This is what drives all of that home. This is the common ground. So you've heard me say it before. If this is where I make my stand, fine. So be it. This will be my hill. I could give money to political candidates if I want to. I sponsor things like this because this is the conversation that needs to be had in our world right now.
I hope it unifies us for the better and in ways that can improve society and, again, elevate humanity.
Absolutely.
And do what we can to, make these beautiful discoveries that keep us going. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel, thank you so much, as always, for coming on, bud.
Of course, Chris.
Look right there. Let everybody know where they can go to follow the Vortex, where they can go to buy your upcoming book whenever it comes out, all that good stuff. Bud.
Absolutely. So I'm pretty accessible on all social media platforms. I do have the Vortex channel on YouTube, which you can watch all these other fun interviews and presentations. And when I finally get the Aurora publication about the legend of 1897, it's going to have an interactive timeline and full of resources. So I'll be posting that on my website as well, which you can go check out, vortex.online. And then along with the ethnology I mentioned earlier, Mythos, and that's going to be coming out, hopefully soon after. But it's something that I think is important for us to be able to continue looking at, that it's not just going to have all the answers. I think that it's important to show that it's just a point of conversation that helps, initiate further dialogue, and that we can continue to work together to find out what's next. So I'm glad to follow up for anyone who's interested in and looking further into the Aurora legend, anything to do with the subject of UFOs or any other mysterious subject that I'm featuring in that book, Mythos, as well. So they can find it online and on pretty much all social media platforms. Yeah,
fantastic, man. So happy to hear it, because once again, it's not about the questions or the answers posed in the book. It's about the questions posed in the book.
That's it, yeah.
And what we do with those questions, Daniel. Always great talking with you. I love our conversations on and off air, bud.
As always.
While you are online checking out all of the amazing work from Daniel Allen Jones and the Vortex at Vortex Online, make sure to stop on by CuriousRealm.com. CuriousRealm.com is where you can find all the episodes. That's where you can like, follow, subscribe, all that good business. That's where you can find Daniel Allen Jones channel, as well as all of our guests' YouTube channels embedded right there on our videos page, so you can very easily find and follow their proper channels, folks. Thanks as always for tuning in. Thanks as always for having open hearts, open minds for these hard conversations. It's always great talking with you guys, always great talking with the researchers. Stay tuned, everybody. Next Tuesday night, we will be airing our full coverage from MUFON Symposium 2023 in Cincinnati, Ohio. That wraps our official coverage for Texas UFOcon 2023 here in Jefferson, Texas. Thank you so much for tuning in as always, everybody. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, stay curious. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault on our website, CuriousRealm.com. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast services, as well as YouTube, Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV through the APR TV app, available on all app markets. Curious Realm is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more great content or to become a sponsor of Curious Realm or other podcasts, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com today. Thanks for listening. Stay curious. And remember, the other side is always watching.